Oh, yeah.
We talked to them in the emergency room on the way down here. They still said it's critical. You need to get in. When we walked in, the emergency room, there were two people standing at the desk, and the woman turned away from them and said, "Are you the holidays?"
No, I haven't.
So she let these
I've been to
people
the one
at the desk
downtown.
take
Yeah,
us to a
it's
restaurant.
nice in there. I went in there and
not
talked to
good.
them the other day.
We went in today and she said this is
Yeah.
sort of a soft.
And then
Might.
we had much
That name rings a bell. That might be the
Yeah.
partners.
I thought, that's really
really good. I said, this is exactly what I'm
doctor
talking
and
about.
nurse and kids and there's a
Little
social.
cafe.
He's a functioning
yeah.
guy, isn't he?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
Yeah,
they
that
said
would be the
they
perfect
got
fit.
EMS driving at the car.
I think that's right. I think that's
Right.
what's on the deed. I pulled it up.
Good.
Maybe she can talk to some of her downtown
He was
friends to
unconscious when they got there.
Yeah.
And they were able to get him to
open something out here.
come back, basically. So it,
Well, it sounded like just from the.
I think Jim was
We don't want
not
her.
prepared for that.
Really?
Just from
Good luck.
when he talked to
Well,
his niece and when he talked to him
Yep.
in the emergency room, he thought maybe they
I've got
had
to.
life support and he was going to back then.
I'll go down
But, it would have been.
Go
It
down to
would
Brazil
have
this
been.
weekend.
So, but,
You're right. You're lucky.
oh,
What?
yeah.
Yeah. Sure. What they're all
Well,
maybe here
all
against
the,
the probably that against the
well,
town
not
center.
some.
It's
He goes to the
Redneck
Lutheran
very
church along Broadway.
it's
Jim's
redneck.
uncle was a minister there a long
Yep.
time ago. He was retired. And then after he retired, he stayed on as a senior minister there. And so when his brother moved
Yeah,
to town,
I don't think people realize they can get, when the agendas come available, you can get them emailed to you. We'll go by your watches too.
okay. What's it say there? Does it say?
I set mine 3 to 4 minutes fast.
Oh,
Just so I'll
you'll
hopefully
get there.
won't be late for me.
But it's been, we went in as
About a year
which was
tonight.
eerie.
No, I know.
Good.
Check my time on Bill 7.
That.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
We're not,
7 o'clock.
we're not.
Okay.
Dr. McIntyre had a hang-up job on his own.
Don't worry about this. I'll take one of these days. I gotta go. Craziest
That one was,
Oh yeah.
I want to call the meeting, September the 18th meeting of the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission to order. I have the wrong paperwork here. Sorry, this. And I want to, we want to start out tonight with the citizens forum. First of all, I have a comment to make to other members of the Planning Commission. I had a request at last month's meeting to please, when you talk, please talk into the microphone. People weren't able to hear us last month, so if you would, just point your face at that microphone and talk into it, please. And Louise has a comment.
that's me. I just wanted to remind everyone, just as a public service announcement, agendas for most, if not all, of the meetings that are going on are available online by going to the town website at www.townoffarragut.org. You click on the agendas and minutes on the left side of the page. When you get to that, you get to the tools and click on Notify Me. You sign in with your email, and you can check any agenda you want sent to you. When those agendas become available, they will send you an email. You click on it, the agenda comes up, and you can check out what's going on in the town. Also, we have a YouTube channel, Town of Farragut TN. Go to YouTube, search Town of Farragut, and all the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, MPC meetings, and I think the zoning appeal meetings are what is uploaded on that, correct?
Yeah, I think the VRB, the BZA, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen and Planning Commission.
Okay. And just as a piece of information, the Board of Mayor Aldermen meeting that was held last Thursday is already uploaded. So they try to be very timely about getting everything up there so you have all your information if you guys need anything. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Mark, do you have a couple of updates or reminders about training? We've got one coming up.
Yeah, there's one coming up on the
30th, I believe.
30th.
September the 30th.
30th of September for that would be a good one for property rights. It's going to be presented in this space here.
Do you know the time? Just curious.
I think it's 6 to 8,
Okay.
and it's open to anybody, the public. I mean, anyone. But that would definitely go toward your 4 hours of required training per calendar year.
Anybody else have any questions or comments Anyone in the audience have any comments or questions that do not relate to anything that's on the agenda tonight? We have a Boy Scout with us, and we always ask them to come up to the microphone, please, and tell us your name, your troop number, and what badge you're working on. And we ask anybody that comes up to the microphone over there if they also please speak into the microphone, because people at home can't hear you and it leads for very boring TV.
All right. My name is Will Harry, and I am from Troop 444, and I am going to be working on my communications and citizenship in the Community Merit Badge.
Thank you for coming tonight. We hope we can show you some communication here. Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes for the August 21st, 2014 meeting.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and public hearing on a request to rezone parcel 109, tax map 130-820, North Campbell Station Road, north of the Holiday Inn Express, 33 acres from R-2 to R-6, OSMFR. PMG applicant.
This rezoning request involves the property that's outlined there to the left. It is north of the interstate on North Campbell Station Road, just north of the Holiday Inn Express. It's 33 acres roughly. And the request, it's currently zoned R2, and they're requesting to rezone it to a zoning district that's not been finalized yet. It's actually going to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for second reading in October, their first meeting in October. And it's the R6 open space multifamily residential overlay district. Just to kind of update everyone on this particular property and zoning district, you know, when we were going through the R6, looking at the current R6 zoning district, there seemed to be a need to create a separate zoning district that would try to address properties that had significant physical limitations. So we created this open space multifamily overlay to provide flexibility in building placement and in height, some reduction in setbacks and buffer strips, so that the applicant could cluster development on the more developable portions of the property. In exchange for that, there is a requirement for at least 50% of the entire property to be in permanent open space. So that's kind of a summary of that particular zoning district. As you can see, this particular property is very steep sloped, this topographic map. Really steep slopes there, you know, well over 20%. And you got a drainage way that runs through kind of the middle of the property at that point. So the thought was on this particular property, and what we've been working with the applicant for really several months, going through this text amendment process, was to try to provide for some zoning district that would allow for multifamily, but would let them cluster the development front portion, it's kind of a big open field for the most part. They won't be able to get all of the development there, but a vast majority of it would be situated in that area next to North Campbell Station Road. In the comprehensive land use plan, this particular property was recognized as having these physical limitations, and therefore in the land use descriptions it was called out as a good candidate for open space cluster residential. When the plan was approved in 2012, obviously we didn't have this zoning district option that applied to multifamily. So when you look at the density description in the land use plan for open space cluster, it's really geared toward language that's consistent with the open space cluster districts that we do currently have, and that's the OSR and the OSMR, and those are both tied to R1 zoning, so it's which is a 20,000 square foot lot, much less dense than what this particular request would involve, which is potentially up to 12 units per acre. So the staff feels that the property is a good candidate for the requested rezoning based on its physical limitations, but the land use plan will need to be updated to reflect this new application of open space cluster to multifamily, assuming it passes at second reading. The staff is recommending tonight, however, a deferral on action on the rezoning because we're still waiting for the full traffic impact study to be submitted. We had a summary that was emailed to myself and the town engineer a couple of days ago, but we really haven't had a chance to digest that. And of course, we would want to include that information in your packet so that you have time to look through it and are able to fully understand the implications of the rezoning as it would relate to the surrounding transportation system. Obviously, you're significantly increasing the density on this property. So we feel that it's a little bit premature since we do not have the full traffic impact study yet, and we have not been able to assess the summary. We also would like to point out that this property, there's actually two pieces of this property. One is at a small 1 acre tract. Basically where that X is, that's owned by the same property owners, and it would be part of this development. It's in the county currently. We have mentioned to the project engineer that it would make sense for them to request that that parcel be annexed into the town so that it would become all part of the same development. It is in our urban growth plan to be annexed, but they would need to specifically request that. But we would recommend that, and then we would need to do an annexation ordinance for next time, and so that could be incorporated into the property considered for rezoning, so it could all be done at one time. So that's kind of a summary of the request.
Mark, before you move on, would you describe exactly where this piece of property is? And this is the only piece of property that we're considering tonight.
Yes, this is the only piece that we're considering. It's north of the interstate, just north of Holiday Inn Express. It's the property. This is Oxford Christian School property there. This is out in the county, all this area over here, and of course Holiday Inn Express. So it's kind of that's the general location. But it will have a traffic impact, and even though it is North Campbell Station Road, as you go north of that property, the road becomes much less of a typical arterial type of cross section. So, but I think the applicants here, if you have any other questions.
Well, let's talk about the traffic impact study kind of timeline. You all gotten a summary report, is that right? And then, but the full report for your evaluation is still to come? Or help me understand where we are with that impact study.
Well, we just got an email from the consultant of some summary findings, and we haven't really had a chance to thoroughly go through that and discuss the implications of it. And we would also want to include that in your all's packet so that you could have time to look through it and, if you had any questions, that you would be able to formulate those, for discussion.
Is there any reason to think we wouldn't have that by the next meeting?
I will defer to them on that. I would think it will be ready by then.
Yes, Jason Perry, 564 Lost Tree Lane. What I have here is a copy of the email that we sent to Mark and his team. If I could pass it to you all and show you kind of what the impact is.
What if you'll just hand it over, we'll pass them down.
Basically, what you have there is it's a preliminary look at what we typically do on the front end of all projects. Not only on this property, we definitely will have some impact on the traffic. The one thing, though, that we typically do in these types of situations when we're working through a piece of property is, and almost every piece of property you're talking about, and some of the differences that you kind of weigh out between how commercial developers, such as multifamily developers and residential developers, traffic studies are pretty much a normal thing of what we do. In fact, every piece of property typically has a traffic study attached to it. But I think the one question that we would have is the timing, because typically what we would do, and we've done this multiple times in zoning multifamily, we would get a zoning on a multifamily piece of property, and where this is a little bit of an unusual situation is that we actually had to go in and work with Mark and his team to change the text amendment. So, but typically when we start spending money on traffic studies, which is about $7,500 here, then of course with surveys, which costs us, to get the full-blown survey, which is considered an ALTA survey, is about $35,000, and those types of expenses usually come after zoning is reached. Typically what we see in most projects, and almost 99.9% of all the projects that we do, the type of traffic study and the impacts on the traffic are done and approved during site plan approval. So when we would come back again at site plan approval, the traffic study would be a part of that, and we would make the necessary adjustments to the property and to the roadway out front that would alleviate any added traffic or any concerns that the town engineer would have. Basically, whether if we had to add a lane in there, a decel lane, acel lane, even a turn lane, and typically, like I said, we're very much used to doing those types of things on any property that we have. So, the one question would be, usually we like to get zoning, and in most properties we do have zoning before we move into those types of studies, and we're usually not, doing it, not in the typical sense of the word, kind of backwards, where we're doing the stuff on the front end, then getting zoning, because if you don't get zoning, you wouldn't spend that type of money on a traffic study, and you wouldn't spend that type of money on a survey, because you'll be in a cost range somewhere in the, we'll be somewhere up or close to $200,000 by that point to get all that information that's going to be needed. And for site plan approval, okay, that's okay. We understand that that's a risk we have to take. But for zoning, typically, we would have zoning on a property before we would move into traffic, before we would move into ALTA survey, before we would move into final construction and site plan documents. So that would be the one thing that we would like to have zoning on this property, so we could move forward and understand with the agreeance that, hey, if we have site plan, we'll have the full traffic study as we move into site plan, but we'll make any adjustments that needed, any recommendations that are needed to the site to alleviate any traffic issues. And according to Cannon, as where they stand today, we are minimal. We'll have minimal impact on the traffic going down towards the interstate and at the lights there at Schneider and at. And I don't think we'll have any impact at Parkside or Parkside Drive.
How many units are you anticipating?
The study is for actually 280 units. We are doing 240 units. So the actual study that you see that they are doing is for 280 units there, and there was a minimal impact on the 280 units, but we're only going to do 240 units. And the reason that is because what Mark said, we're going to leave 50% of, at the request of Mark, 50% of the site is just going to be left in green space, and then we're only using the front half of the property. So we're not going to, for lack of a better term, crowd a bunch of units in there, try to shove a bunch of units. That's not what we do. We build Class A multifamily. So, our goal is to have a nice, balanced piece of property that our residents can enjoy and be able to get in and out and flow in and out of traffic very easily, because it's a deterrent to our property, to our lease up, to everything if it's a traffic nightmare to get in and out of that property.
Anyone have any questions, comments?
Okay, I have a question. I assume, just from what you've written, the zoning has not fully passed. We don't have, the zoning doesn't exist
Text.
yet.
Yeah, the text would be up for second reading in the first meeting in October.
So we can't
For-
really,
It's been recommended for approval at first reading last Thursday, but it's not finalized, obviously.
what does that mean for us?
Well, if it were otherwise ready to be considered, you could recommend favorably for the rezoning, pending obviously the final approval of the text amendment, because if the text amendment doesn't pass, they couldn't do the project anyway. So you could tie it in that way if it were otherwise ready to be considered.
Yeah, and by all means, I mean, obviously we've already engaged the traffic study, we've already engaged the surveyors, we've done that. We knew we would have to have it. It's kind of a timing thing, but typically in most multifamily developments, you have zoning before you engage these types of third parties and that type of expense, and that's pretty much what we have. When we go in other places, other developments throughout the southeast, for sure.
The logic we had on this was that, and it's pretty common in other communities that we looked at, is if you're requesting a rezoning that would significantly increase the density, then you need to understand the implications of approving that rezoning from a variety of perspectives, but certainly from the traffic related perspective. So that's why we were wanting to kind of have a closer review of the impact study, and then also share it with you all ahead of time so that you could understand it. I may not. I'm kind of don't really understand a lot of it personally, but but at least it would be something that you've had a chance to carefully consider before you are recommended to substantially increase the density on the property. Like I said earlier, I think the property personally is a good candidate for what they're requesting as far as the zoning district. I do think the comprehensive plan needs to be updated just to reflect that. But I think it's a good candidate, but we also need to consider what the implications of that increased density could be.
And a question maybe to Mark, is there a common ground that we could say, or if the board finds approval, obviously, but a common ground to say, okay, they could vote and we could have you could zone it, but with the stipulation, if the traffic study doesn't come back, or you understand what I'm saying? Is there some common ground in there? And I understand, because believe me, Mark, I understand exactly what you're trying to do, and I don't disagree with you. But is there some common ground there that we can say, okay, guys, we like the project, we like the idea of zoning this property, we'll go ahead and move forward. But if the traffic study doesn't come back, and obviously if we don't get the alderman's approval next month, it's dead anyway. But because, like I said, I got to justify expenses. That's what I'm trying to do, and just justify to my team and my partners that, hey, we got a green light to move forward here. Because typically, if you don't get a zoning vote or delay in zoning, it's kind of a red flag to everybody in the project that, hey, this, it doesn't really want to go forward.
The only issue with that is, and I certainly don't want to hold your project up.
No, I know.
That's why we try to put it on the agenda. But if you don't, if you recommend favorably for it tonight, then they won't have a chance to look at it before they make that recommendation because it hasn't been submitted.
Yeah, but wouldn't they make that decision and typically they make those decisions at site plan approval. I mean, and that's really where because what you're going to see at site plan approval, not only will you see what the traffic study is, but you're also going to see the remedies to those. And that's really, and that's typically what we see. We see folks when you go in for zoning, you have zoning, and then really where the nuts and bolts of it, regardless of the project, it's at site plan approval where people come out in opposition, where people come out in favor or against. The zoning's typically in place in a jurisdiction or in a municipality. That type of zoning's already set, and we're just working within the parameters of that zoning. Here, where we had to go back and where we had to recreate the text amendment. And move forward like that. So this is kind of, where we're trying to find common ground with you guys to, we got to, I guess try to find some give and take. That's why, the request for zoning now, but, in the stipulations we understand, look, site plan approval is really where the nuts and bolts of how a multifamily project is really done and zoned, because if you don't get site plan approval, obviously you're not getting building permits and moving forward. So it's not like if the board would find favorably on our side tonight, you all wouldn't have the ability to say, okay, Jason, great, you got a great site, you have a great site, but you haven't answered or eliminated our concerns about traffic. You would still have the ability to fall back and say, look, you haven't answered our concerns there. No, thank you. We don't want to move forward. So you're not losing that ability, I don't think. I mean, I think that's fair to say, wouldn't you, Mark?
I think as a point of order that we can't make a recommendation till such time as the ordinance is approved. I mean, you may want to, but I don't think we can do that.
I'll speak to a couple things that Jason said. Putting the cart before the horse is true in a lot of the aspects that he said customarily with this. My hang-up is really not with the traffic study at all. I think matter of fact, this was our case study for this zoning district all along, this particular piece of property. I think it's a super piece of property for this R6 OSMFR district. What gives me a little bit of heartburn, and a lot of it has to do with last month we held the land use plan as the holy grail, and I think we're lacking some consistency tonight. If that land use plan is not amended concurrently or prior to this rezoning, I think we have a real issue going forward with trying to explain to one party why we held the land use plan up on such a high rung on the ladder, but at some other times we're not holding it as high. Again, Jason, no disrespect to you, it's a great piece of property. As you know, I've been an advocate of this particular zoning district specifically. This is a great piece of property for it, a lot of open space, a lot of great things to be had here. But again, what I'm most concerned about is not necessarily the traffic study tonight. I do think having them go through with the expense of a traffic study is a little unorthodox in my experience prior to a rezoning. It could be subject to, but what I am having heartburn again is the land use plan. We're doing exactly what we said we wouldn't do a month ago, and that's what I have a problem with.
Well, part of the issue with the land use plan, and I think it like I mentioned earlier, it needs to be updated. The thing is, this has been created after the land use plan, so it's not like that there's an intent to be inconsistent with the plan. I think it's consistent with the intent if you look at the intent of open space cluster, but it's just that the fact that this is a new ordinance that applies now to a different type of development that wasn't foreseen whenever this was written, but it does need to be amended. I do agree with you.
Can I ask a quick question about amending the land use plan? Do we just have to amend it at this level, or does it have to go, once we amend it, does it have to go through approval through the Board of Mayor and Aldermen?
Well, it would just be through you all, since the Planning Commission adopted it. It has not been further than that, but and there's a question of whether it's a major versus a minor amendment. I think you could argue both ways really on this. I think it's very consistent with the intent of open space cluster. It's just that wording dealing with density did not envision us applying it to a multifamily context. So,
Can we do that by next month?
Yeah, we could put, yes, we can add that.
I mean, I'm all for trying to run this as much concurrently as possible for the applicant to try to expedite the process.
Also, too, you're at 33 acres on this site, approximately about 33 acres. We're below 10 units an acre. At 240, 33 acres, that's 330 units. We're 100 units below, so when it comes down to density and things like that, our project, we're at 240. We fit underneath the current guidelines of what Farragut already has. Because
Under the R6.
Yeah, we
Problem is
fit,
with
yeah. No, I agree with you.
We didn't identify this for a multifamily in the land use plan.
Yeah.
And so what Mark's saying is true. We're creating a hybrid ordinance that was not even contemplated when, actually, we may have actually contemplated. We may have actually discussed it and said, hey, the day may come when this comes before us. But nevertheless, I think we just need to be consistent with our decisions starting last month from here forward. There's going to be things that come before us that are not consistent, and this is one of them, but it's a great idea. And personally, I feel like that this warrants a change to the land use plan, and it's a great candidate for the R6. I'm just going to call it the OSR instead of trying to all the letters. But nevertheless, I'd be all for trying to move this as quickly through the process. But I think it's real important that we discuss the land use plan first, and then the next agenda item would be going to this.
I guess I couldn't agree more, because right now we're in the early stages of implementing the land use plan, and what we do now will set the precedents for the way we're going to handle that being a living document and how it interacts.
Well, we set that precedent last month.
Right. We're in the early stages of that, and so these early instances that we have to deal with, and how we're going to do that as a process, use that document, use it in our deliberations, use it for the input from the citizenry and what have you. I think we've also got to mix in the annexation in this too. I don't want to forget that. So there's a number of things concurrently got to fall into place here, and I think we need to make sure we're very deliberate about it, but we can still be expeditious but deliberate.
While we're talking about annexation, let me jump on that. Personally, I don't want to force feed the annexation to you. I would like to hear what your thoughts are with the annexation.
We don't have a problem on this particular property. I mean, for us, from a title standpoint, it's much better to have it under one jurisdiction, one municipality. So we don't have any issues whatsoever on annexation on this property.
Great. I wish all the folks that we've ever brought the word annexation would agree the same, but they don't.
Well, it would definitely make for a cleaner project and less complication.
Well, it'd be easier on you and your civil engineer, that's for sure.
Yeah,
And
sure.
the whole permitting process.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so with the point that Ed brought up and the other points that we have here, do we have?
I move for deferral.
I'd like to make a comment. I think what everybody has said is correct, and it's all valid. But at the end of the day, what I think we're getting overly hung up on, unless I'm missing something. It's kind of a chicken or egg type thing that we're in here. We have a variety of issues that everybody would like to do in the proper order. I don't hear anybody saying that we don't have to do all these things, or that there's a lack of a desire to ultimately get to the same end zone. I think we're all shooting for the same spot. Just a matter of which step we have to take in which order. Without hearing any long-term dissent on this, I don't see any reason to not do a couple things out of order. Just because it's out of order doesn't make it improper. And I can appreciate all the comments, but by the time we try to do every one of these steps going 1, 2, 3, 4 instead of 1, 3, 2, 4, I just see it slowing something down that we're all headed towards anyways.
I disagree. I think the vision is that steps 1, 2, 3, and 4 could be done simultaneously, but they're not going to be done tonight. They need to be done as concurrently as we can at the next meeting.
And we can have that by next week.
So I make a motion to defer it to the next meeting.
I second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Do we need a vote on that, or do you have that?
No, I think I have it.
We voted on, it's one more comment that I think the applicant, if I was in his shoes, I'd want some guidance. I can't see any reason why his ALTA survey or any kind of boundary survey would be required at this juncture prior to next meeting. Traffic impact study, we could debate either way. But I just can't. It is, especially on 33 wooded acres that's hilly, it is a very expensive survey. I've dealt with surveys like that. And if it's the will of this board, I'd like to be able to give the applicant some direction and say, hey, that ALTA survey is not required at this time.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
Well, it isn't required because we postponed it.
Well, I'm going to say what I'm saying is even not required by next month.
It was asked for. It was asked for. The ALTA survey and the traffic study was actually asked for, or at least a survey. But in our world, in multifamily, it's an ALTA survey. I mean, there's no different. You don't get a survey and then come back and get an ALTA survey. You just get an ALTA survey done. And like I said, they're typically, in expense-wise, about $60,000, especially on this type of property. But I guess the question for me, and the only thing I would like to take back out of this, and I understand your reason for deferral. I understand we're trying to work through a text amendment. You're trying to create something new here. I understood completely. Is there anybody that has any real dissent at this point over what we're doing or the focus that we're working on here?
Let me make my point again. The
Yeah.
only dissent, I think I agree with it, pretty much agree with it you guys are doing there.
Mm-hmm.
Unless there's something that I don't know at all about. What I'm disagreeing with is proceeding with zoning something to OSR 6 when the zoning ordinance doesn't exist yet because it hasn't been passed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
No. And I understand that completely, and that's and part of the question is, and from a purely financial perspective, if nobody here, if I'm not hearing any dissent, folks in the room obviously are going to speak as well for this particular piece of property, then it lets me walk away with enough justification to say to myself and to my partners, hey guys, we don't really have any dissent from the board in the town. We can continue to move forward. It's not a huge deal for us. We know we're going to incur the expense at some point. But, as long as nobody comes out and says, we're completely against the project and this and that, we're going to continue to move forward. And also, too, it does give us the ability to provide you all, even in the next meeting, with as much information and as much as possible to the point where, perhaps we even have the remedies. By the time you have the traffic study, we already have the remedies completed and drawn up. So, at that point, it becomes a non-issue. So that's really what I'm just looking for. That's it.
Mark, can we do that?
Can we have all that ready, or?
No, can we, is it procedurally okay to give him an idea of,
It's kind of like a workshop in a way.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think
It's kind of it's a
you can
workshop,
give
and that's
it
that's
your
usually what
thought.
applicant wants at the workshop is they'd like to know what the
Like I
what-
said earlier, I think the property is a good candidate for what they're wanting to do. They just need to iron out the specifics, but I do think it's it's like you said, Noah, it's a case study for that zoning district. It's one of the properties that was in mind when we created that zoning district. So by the time it comes before you next time, the district will have been considered for second reading, and then they'll have their other stuff finished. So I think it'll be a much more organized and complete submittal, and if however you all feel about
if the
project.
zoning if the ordinance would be already passed and you all would have had this, we would already have the information. Obviously,
Right.
we took steps first to get here. So, and that's the reason for the question. Really, kind of, are we out of order a little bit? Yeah, but we're big boys. We can take care of that. We're not worried about that so much. But if there's a negative thoughts and feelings on this particular property, we'd like to hear it and know where it stands. Because like I said, we're more than happy to continue to move forward and work with Mark and Daryl and the rest of the guys to make sure that we give the town of Farragut exactly what they need out of this project.
Rita, there may be some citizens here that we may want to hear. They may want to be heard, and Jason may as well want to hear them on this particular topic for tonight. So
Okay.
even though we didn't necessarily call for it, this might be as good a time as any.
Can I just have one concern, and I'm not even sure if this is an appropriate time to bring it up. I'm not sure if you're aware of where that property and how that property is zoned for schools, but you have essentially the potential for 3 school buses coming by there in the morning and 3 school buses coming by there in the afternoon. Because one's going to Hardin Valley, one's going to Farragut Middle, and one's going to Farragut
Correct.
Intermediate and Primary. When you develop this, do you take that into consideration because of that being an arterial road? And I don't care if the school bus arm goes down. People drive like idiots, and we don't need kids. Is there a way that you pull school buses into the property? I know this is premature, but
Yeah,
that's something you
and I'll
think
give you
about.
my take on that road and that area. I've lived here, been in Farragut all my life. We all know that's pretty dangerous coming down that hill. We have to eliminate that. We have to increase visibility. We have to slow people down coming down that hill and accelerating up that hill. So those are the things that we have to do. Of course, we're going to make sure school buses are
Okay.
completely 100% safe. Safety is our 100% goal and it comes down to a financial perspective at all. Call it capitalism if you want to. We have to make sure that our residents and the residents around there are 100% protected there, as we increase, add traffic. We're definitely adding traffic to it, no doubt about it. So we have to make sure that road is better than the day we got there. That is 100% of what we're going to do.
Now, does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? And this is about the Campbell Station Road project.
We're not, Christmas.
Can you come up? We ask you please come up to the microphone. Let us know who you are and where you live.
I'm Newton Calhoun from Berkeley Park. I got an email saying this meeting tonight was about an apartment complex on Grigsby Chapel. Is that the same thing or
No.
something totally different?
Totally different.
Okay. That's all.
Just to keep watch for that one. Tonight is just Campbell Station.
Jason or Daryl, I don't know who could answer this. What does a typical apartment generate in average daily trips? Is it the same
7.
as single family, or is it
Well,
higher?
7 per unit, Leon? 7 per unit. Yeah, we use 7 per unit typically, and we can. And a lot of folks will tell you different. Some people tell you 4 and 5, but that's completely false. It's 7 or 8, exactly right. So we multiply for that, and like I said, we get Cannon and Cannon, our civil
Right.
engineers too, and we'll work with the road guys, whomever we got to bring in to do it, and we'll make sure the road is accommodating for that.
What's regular single family?
Normally about 9 or 10.
Okay. Just because they figure larger houses, more kids going to soccer practice and things like that. Is that?
Yeah.
No, it's my understanding that with regular single-family residential, a lot of times you'll have, that's probably 2 cars. With apartment complexes, a lot of times you may have 1-bedroom units with only
Right.
1 car.
Okay.
So fewer trips.
Thanks.
If you have a question, come up to the microphone, please.
I'm Susan Buell here with my husband. We live on Grigsby Chapel. And I am interested in that you're speaking as the Farragut Municipal Planning Commission, and traffic is my main concern. And you're speaking of the safety from the complex down toward Farragut and toward I-40. But I will not drive the road down to Yarnell, I think it is, and over to Hardin Valley. I consider it a subpar road at this time, and I'm wondering if the Knox County Planning Commission is involved in this evaluation, because did you say 300 something, maybe 300 units? Is that how many? Okay, 240. Well, they're going to Hardin Valley. What about the rest of the path? Not just we're focused this way, but what about the other way? That's my question.
I can answer that. Basically, traffic flows to certain distances. That's how they judge traffic. So when you do a traffic study, there's certain levels of a traffic study. You can get a Schedule 1, Schedule 2. Like for our particular unit, typically state regulations will require us, to go a certain distance. So that distance is typically to Schneider Road and to the interstate, where the majority of concern in the town of Farragut would be, impacting the interstate there. You could take it on, and we've even gone a little even further. We've looked at if we have any real impact on Parkside Drive. Now, when you come down, when you're talking about the other way, what you're really talking about where the danger is created from is entering and exiting. The flow of traffic typically dissipates at, you got the stop sign on top of the hill up there, and but the flow of traffic really dissipates, at a certain distance, and you just kind of have to, depending on the amount of units, 280. So if you figure, less than a quarter of a mile. So, but what we're planning on doing on both sides of the road is basically open up an A-cell and D-cell lane, because if you've been on the road, right there, and you guys are coming into the town of Farragut and go, we can't deal with Knox County. I mean, we're just, like I said, we're not in Knox County. I can't go to Knox County and ask them to do anything. But what we can do on our property, and we have a sizable frontage piece of property, is open up the road enough to where, as you're coming down the hill from that, from the stop sign, and people come down there at an excessive rate of speed, is to slow them down, open the road up with, if it takes an extra lane, it's going to take an extra lane. We're going to do the maximum amount that we can do to make sure that the traffic, and one thing that I know of is, visibility is a big key. You have to increase the visibility, and we have to increase the ability to people to accelerate and decelerate. And more importantly, as people come down the hill, and that's really what you're talking about, going up into the hill and into the rest of the neighborhoods is not as dangerous as when they're coming down. So what we do is we open the road up and allow for acceleration and deceleration of lanes to slow people down, and of course signaling and traffic type things that are going to force people, and whether we have to get speed bumps and things like that put in there, and that's what we'll work with the civil folks here in the town to work with, to make sure once again that everybody's safe. I mean, that's our main goal, 100%, and we get you.
Anyone else?
My name is Blake Graham, and I'm with Knoxville Christian School, and we just wanted to offer some support. We are not against this project. I wanted to make sure that they knew that we're not against it. We'd like to work with you on it to make sure it's. We'd like to see the traffic study, but we would like to see to work with them to make sure that the properties are adjoined properly and that there's plenty of space around it. I've seen the plans. I think that it's going to go well, so I just wanted you to know.
Thank you very much.
Mark, how can he access that traffic information, traffic study?
Well, that will be part of the packet next time. We put the entire packet on the website, so it will be on the website.
Yeah, we'll make it available. One thing about the project, too, and exactly what he said, we put in a Knox Christian there. I mean, obviously, we're going to have a tremendous amount of green space, walking trails, and our architects and folks have offered the ability for, if there's use that the school can have, we're more than happy. As much community use that we can get out of the property and out of the green space that we have is what we want. I mean, visibility and traffic to us, we deal with those things. Those are normal days in and days out for us. I mean, for single-family developers would not want to increase the road and not have to have that added expense. For multifamily developers, that's not the issue. Our issue is getting them, getting open, and creating a very safe environment. So we really want to work with the school behind us to create a community sense for not only for our residents, but for the school and the folks that can join our property as well.
Okay, anybody else now?
I would say one thing about the comprehensive plan. We're internally going to have a review of that comprehensively at least once a year and make any adjustments that are necessary. I just throw that out there. I think it's good to keep it fresh and keep it current with changes that occur to ordinances and so forth. So we will be doing that at least on an annual basis, just to look at it comprehensively and make sure it still meets the objectives of the community and is consistent with anything that has changed since the previous review. So.
Okay, so by next month we'll have all the parts.
We can have an amendment for this particular one that Noah was talking about. Yes.
And we'll have the annexation information that we need ready, and.
Yeah, we just need something from the applicant that requests to be annexed. There's some state law out there that's dealing with annexation, so we do need to have their request to be annexed by the town, because we don't want to initiate that. That would need to be initiated by them.
Can Jason do that in an email? Just send you an email. Is that suffice, or is there something more formal?
I'm not really sure.
There actually is a formal annexation. Yeah, there actually is a formal. You actually have to deal with the state and that regulation. But yeah, our civil engineer and our attorneys will set that up for everybody.
Okay.
I mean,
we're trying to keep from slowing you down next month.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, but we'll definitely take care of that. Our civil guys are working on that, and our attorneys will take care of it.
Okay.
Mark, can I ask a real quick question? Comprehensive plan, if we're making an amendment, is that a text and map, or is it just a map amendment? What does that mean when you're,
Well, it could be both.
okay. In this case, it's probably just a map amendment.
And probably, since we're including something in that comprehensive use plan that's not in there now, it's probably both. We need to put some language and amend the map.
Definitely the language. Yeah.
Thank you, and we're ready to move on to item number 4, discussion on a realignment of intersection of US 11 and US 70 Dixie-Lee Junction in Loudoun County.
I'm going to turn it over to town engineer Darrell Smith.
Mark, I was going to let you introduce it if you want to, but
Oh, well, I can.
it doesn't matter.
Good.
It's been just a little while since I've been in front of Planning Commission, so
Maybe
good evening.
introduce yourself to, we have several.
I am Darrell Smith. I'm the town engineer.
We've been saving up all our questions.
And we know where you live.
And you know where I live.
We can find you.
So, we are bringing this to you tonight, not requesting action by the Planning Commission, but this is more or less just an update of where this project stands. As some of you may be aware, for some time, the Tennessee Department of Transportation has been looking into improving the intersection of U.S. Highways 11 and 70, which we all know as the Dixie-Lee intersection, which is just west of the town limits on Kingston Pike. Any of you that drive through that intersection frequently are probably aware that it has a dubious level of service. There's a lot of difficulty with that intersection. What we're looking at right now, well, let me point out, I guess, a very important point here. Earlier on, TDOT was looking, and we all talked about it, the possibility of a roundabout at that intersection. And I was kind of jazzed about that because after the Concord Road intersection at North Shore, I'm a fan of roundabouts. But unfortunately, when TDOT created the model, projected traffic counts into the future, a roundabout essentially just failed as far as level of service. I think probably the movement that was the most difficult was the eastbound movement on Highway 70, moving through a roundabout to head east on Kingston Pike. So with that in mind, they looked at other options, and this is the option that they are moving forward with. I really wish that was a little bit darker up there.
Yeah, it is hard to see.
It's kind of hard to see there. This is essentially a T intersection of Highway 11 coming into 70 at Kingston Pike.
Try that, it won't show up.
It's a signalized intersection with a double left turn
black and
for
white,
westbound movement, turning left onto Highway 11. Comes out right in front of the church. I can't think of the name of the church there. Two Rivers Church. The existing roadway through the curve in front of the businesses there becomes more or less a frontage road with, thank you, Mark. He's marking on that.
Crooked line.
That's magic. That becomes a frontage road that has a stop condition at either end.
Tennessee Planning website.
One important element of this is for motorists that are heading north on Highway 11, turning right onto Kingston Pike, they will have a free movement. While it is a signalized intersection, it will just be a free movement into a developed outside lane. So that they will not have to stop at the signal. So we feel like this provides the best level of service. Now, for the most part, for the vast majority of this project is in Loudoun County. Mark, what was that?
It's possessed.
This project, for the most part, is outside of our jurisdiction. It is in Loudoun County. We have requested, if you can, Mark, I don't know if you can zoom in on that at all.
Well, county line, I think is.
Well, it's a little east of Shipley and Harrison Road.
It's kind of where the match line is. If
Kind of about where the match line is there.
well, that's Shipley. It'd be more where the match line is on that far
Right.
east side.
Yeah, it may not be.
Now, this project as drawn does not provide any sidewalk, any pedestrian facilities, but it does provide a 4-foot shoulder on Kingston Pike that it's not going to be signed at this time as a bike lane. Now, our preference is to include 4-foot bike lanes as well as pedestrian facilities on all arterials. We've expressed that to TDOT. TDOT's thought is, since it is really just an intersection, that they can provide the shoulder and not sign it as a bike lane. In the event that it is eventually from everything west of this project includes a bike lane, then it could be signed at that point. Now, we have requested that TDOT add sidewalk on each side of Kingston Pike, at least within the town limits. And what we've requested, I attended the right-of-way field review meeting last week and requested that they include sidewalk on the north side of Kingston Pike to Harrison Road. On the south side, to include it to Shipley Lane, Shipley Road. The reason being, I mean, while that is outside the town's limits, I can foresee a need for Harrison Road. Well, it's the back entrance to our park. TDOT is looking into the possibility of doing this. It does create an impact to the properties on either side of Kingston Pike. But they're looking into that and to try to see how that's going to affect the right-of-way on those properties. Fact is, if you extend sidewalk to Harrison Road on the north side, that will have a very serious impact to the Shell station on that corner. But the project itself has a very serious impact simply because it's right there on the corner, and you know their access will be limited somewhat with this. So the TDOT is looking into this.
Carol, I have a question for you. You say that the traveling north, there's going to be a turn lane that goes right into the, you won't have to stop at the light.
That's
is
correct.
That fire, whatever that, is that in between?
Hearth and patio?
Yeah,
or fire
Hearth and patio. Is that in between that and the access road? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That business will be taken by this project.
Oh, it will be. Okay.
It will be. It's essentially that triangle that you see there.
Okay.
Daryl, have they shared a grading plan? I'm just curious if that hump's, there's a pretty intense hump right in front of Ace Hardware and between First National Bank, and it just seems like that's going to create a little line of sight down at the intersection. So it would be natural for that hump to come out when they grade this.
I've not seen a grading plan for the whole
thing. It may be
thing.
premature for a grading plan. Maybe they're
It's
just
a little
trying to-
premature for a grading plan. I have seen cross sections, but it's my understanding there are going to be some adjustments made. That triangle. TDOT is aware that there are some drainage issues out there. There are a couple of wet weather conveyances that flow through this area that it's very difficult to provide proper drainage under the roadways. So they're actually looking into the possibility of creating a detention basin within that triangle. Now, I've pointed out to them that I mean, our board of mayor and aldermen, as well as Loudoun County's county commission, has approved a resolution in favor of making this and help me out, Mayor. You may want to help me out with this. It's a gateway intersection. The idea is to make it a more beautiful intersection. It serves as a gateway between Loudoun County and the town of Farragut. I've pointed this out to TDOT, and they're aware of our concerns. We don't have any plans right now for what will be done in this area, but I've asked that if they're going to put a detention basin in that triangle, that at least leave some area that we can maybe have a gateway sign, or a welcome to Loudoun County on one side and welcome to the town of Farragut on the other. But we do want to incorporate some elements of that into this design, so that when we move forward with trying to do something, that can kind of fold into the project.
Well, I've got 2 or 3 questions. First one is, do you have a rough idea of how much property has to be acquired?
I really don't.
Looks to me like it might be quite a bit.
It's quite a bit of property. I really don't. I don't know exactly how much.
And TDOT's paying this whole bill, right?
TDOT is covering the whole bill. I think there are STP funds in there, and TDOT is covering the 20% match, to my understanding.
And when's it scheduled to start?
I think they're looking at would probably be about a minimum of 1 year, but it's probably going to be about a year and a half before will be ready to do this.
Okay.
They will typically give a tentative schedule that I think they're looking at about October of next year, but given several hurdles on this project and acquiring all of the right-of-way that is involved, it may take a little bit longer. So.
And when is Concord Road scheduled? It's pretty soon, isn't it?
I wish I'd reviewed that before I came in. We may be looking another year and a half on that, I believe.
I'm thinking it's not going to be that long.
That would be nice, but I just know that there are a lot of issues out there.
I'll check it out when I go to TPO next week.
Okay, I'll try to find a better answer for you in the next few days.
What about our sidewalk in front of Willow Creek? Where does that stand, since you're here?
Oh, well.
Just curious.
I am actually hoping to be able to do a workshop session with the board next week to kind of give our board an update on that.
Okay.
Our consultant has worked up 2 alternatives on that, and we presented that last week to the golf course folks. They've given us quite a bit of input so far, and we've kind of left it open for them to kind of absorb everything and provide comments in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And we do want to finalize that concept and move forward with it.
Thank you. I know it wasn't on the agenda. I'm just curious.
Oh, it's all right.
Chomping at the bit
Don't
to
mind.
see that done. So,
Mark, would it do any good or be helpful if we were to pass a resolution that we encourage the sidewalks?
Let me chime in there on that. Like I say, TDOT is looking into adding the sidewalk. They have currently curb and gutter shown out there. Adding sidewalk typically isn't a big problem. Now, what I was really hoping to see would be sidewalks on that frontage road, and in a perfect world, extend that south to Old Stage Road, because wouldn't that make a great loop that would come back into the town? But that's kind of up to Loudoun County, because they would have to maintain the thing. I encourage that. There are some issues with those properties out there, the businesses, just topographical issues. There are some steep parking lots, some steep driveways going into them. Adding sidewalk makes it that much more difficult. So Well, TDOT is certainly open to the idea of adding sidewalk to the west, to Harrison Road and Shipley Lane. It's not likely that it's going to be beyond that. But anyway,
Probably
I'll
would-
get back to the question.
Yeah, you
tomorrow.
probably wouldn't necessarily need a resolution. You could just make a recommendation regarding whatever element of this you want to make a recommendation on. It could be the pedestrian facilities or lack of pedestrian facilities. As you all know, the park is real close in that area. I think it would be great if the whole project had sidewalks, just for also to help people from Loudoun County if they wanted to access the park from the west. But I definitely would agree with Darrell. We should strongly recommend and encourage TDOT to at least provide pedestrian facilities in the town portion, which is about 200 to 300 feet, I think, of the total project. So not a huge amount of the project.
Do I have someone that would like to make that?
I just got a question to myself oriented. Shipley is the one that runs from Old Stage down the hill to
Right there by Ace Hardware.
right by Ace Hardware.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm having trouble imagining how this thing's going to look when we get done with it, because that's kind of a mess right now.
It's a narrow lane
Yes, it's a narrow lane, it's steep
and steep,
and poorly paved.
and it's in Loudoun County.
It's a lot of town.
Yeah.
Just throwing that out there.
Oh, I know it's a lot of town, but I mean, I'm just, when they do this intersection, it looks, I'm not visualizing how it works with access to Ace and, is that?
The access to Ace,
Building, it's a part-time fireworks store and.
right,
Yeah,
it's
that's
right
what-
there on the
Left on there.
southeast corner.
It's like the only building that's removed is the Fireside Hearth building, which is, you go back far enough, it's an old Rocky Top Chevrolet building many, many years ago.
That's what it is.
And it looks like that's the only one that's actually going to be condemned completely is that building.
That's correct. And the Ace Hardware entrance will actually be on a straight portion of Kingston Pike. It's kind of hard to see there, but it's just west of Shipley Lane.
Yeah, I think
It's
Ace
right in
Hardware is
there.
probably improved. That's a big improvement for the Ace Hardware to have access without
Right.
having that blind curve.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at this.
You're trying to come here, it's got
Mhm.
a picture stop and do it like that.
That's a right turn you want to make fast, and a left turn you don't want to make at all.
Yeah.
Do we have anyone in the audience that has any questions? If you would, come up to the microphone.
Hi, my name is Dave Harry. I live in Rockwell Farm, and I frequent that intersection quite a bit. And I noticed that you had mentioned sidewalks on either side, and there's a park just north of Kingston Pike. Is there going? And there's a right turn lane from 11 that continues on. There's no stopping there. So is there going to be pedestrian walkway across to the park if there's sidewalks on either side? And it seems like it's a pretty, friendly intersection, but I don't see anything about any crosswalks, and it doesn't look like there might be any if there's no if there isn't a turn, if there isn't any stoppage for the cars turning onto Kingston Pike.
Doesn't look like it.
If I understand the question correctly, you're asking about the fact that sidewalk would be extended to Harrison Road and Shipley Lane. That's just the portion that is just inside the match line there. We would not want to put a crosswalk at that location unless it were signalized. Otherwise, that's more or less a mid-block crossing, and it's hard enough to put those on a 2-lane road, but on a 5-lane, there's a lot going on there.
So the crossing would be at
The crossing would
what road then? Maybe?
That'd be the safest crossing.
The safest crossing would be several hundred feet to the east at Watt Road, and that is planned soon.
There you go. So, anyone
Yes.
want to make a recommendation?
Yeah. That's really, I think, all that he's asking is just you're aware of the project and make any recommendations you see related to what's been presented.
So we want to make does anyone want to make a recommendation for sidewalks, especially in the town of Farragut?
I'll recommend same.
Second,
Second.
we all say aye, or
What was the
Recommend.
Just
Sa-
times,
Darrell,
just as
Darrell
Darrell-
recommendation.
I will, I can't make a motion.
We're Darrell's support.
we're
Just talking about
providing Darrell's
sidewalks in
support.
town.
Really, all, what we want to say is just a statement.
We're endorsing the,
What
We're endorsing
what
the
Darrell said.
sidewalks for the town, for the whole thing, but we specifically want them in the town of Farragut.
Certainly. Well, I will definitely pass that along to TDOT, that our planning commission has backed me up on this. So I'm just hoping to see it. There are some issues with adding the sidewalk. They are looking at the possibility of taking out curb and gutter. That's a drainage issue that we're trying to work out between now and the next meeting with TDOT. So I'll try to keep you abreast.
Thank you for
Sure.
coming and let us know.
All right.
We may have to get you every so often to come in and just answer general questions that we have.
I can do that. All right.
Thanks for coming.
All right. Bye-bye.
Discussion on amendment for the text of the Farragut zoning ordinance as it relates to the mixed-use town center outlined in the comprehensive land use plans. This is for discussion only, is that right?
Yes, that's right. I think before we get into this, any specifics, there's some people here that maybe received letters that were talking about this. They probably don't know what in the world we're talking about, so I thought it would be a good idea to kind of just go through what we're trying to do here, and we certainly want everyone's feedback. This is just a workshop. There's nothing been decided. But dealing with that first question, what are we trying to accomplish? There's been really a long-standing objective in the town, particularly as it has grown. We were founded back in 1980, probably around 6,000 people at that time, and we've grown to well over 20,000. And increasingly, what we've seen requested at public meetings when plans have been updated or created is this deep desire to try to bring about a downtown for Farragut. It's something we obviously don't have, and there's a vision out there to try to accomplish that. Initially, in our previous land use plan that was adopted in 2001, there is actually language in that plan that talked about the desire for a downtown somewhere between Concord Road and Glen Abbey Boulevard along Kingston Pike in that general area. That's really kind of the origin of the town, that intersection of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. We have the historic Russell House on the north side of Kingston Pike there at the northwest quadrant. And there's, that's really the origin of the town, so that was kind of the logic behind that. When we updated the comprehensive plan at the end of 2012, after a lot of public meetings and a lot of public input, the most important strategy that was conveyed to us by the public was strategy 1, and that was to bring about a downtown for Farragut. Why is that important, or why are we even considering this? And what we've heard from those meetings and people that participated is that Farragut really it needs a sense of place and an identity. It's kind of right now just a series of shopping centers and subdivisions, which is not necessarily bad, but it doesn't have that kind of core area that someone could say, I'm in downtown Farragut. It doesn't have that sense of community and cohesion that you see in towns that do have that central gathering place, that downtown. And it also can help us to promote the history that we have in this community. And we have a lot of history. A lot of it is near this intersection, actually, with the Battle of Campbell Station. So that's kind of what we're trying to do to help you understand that. These are some drawings from the comprehensive plan that was adopted at the end of 2012. Again, strategy 1 was to bring about a downtown. There's some description in there about what that would involve, different approaches that could be considered. I don't expect you to read this. Obviously, I can't read it either, but it's just to show you that it's in the plan. It was a very important strategy that was identified by the residents and those that participated in that. So what we currently have actually in place to help bring about a downtown, we did in 2007, we, after months of public discussion and input, we created a town center zoning district. There was property just to the west of the town hall that was actually almost rezoned to town center district, and then the market kind of collapsed, unfortunately, and that project did not happen at that time. But we did create a district for that kind of development, and we created very specific design requirements for what could be applied in a town center application. When the comprehensive plan was updated in 2012 as part of that strategy 1, there's always a map that's created as part of a comprehensive plan, and there was an area designated on the future land use plan as a preferred location for what could become at some point a mixed-use town center. Again, this is a vision. This is thinking out in the future, but you have to start somewhere. So the plan was our starting point. It was our vision. The map conveyed to us what areas would be a preferred location. Those areas in purple were what was identified as part of that public process. Hard to see, but where I drew that X, that's obviously the intersection of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. So the purple area really surrounds that intersection, and it includes part of the Kroger development, the West End Center, some of the property to the west of the town hall, and the property around that intersection and the Village Green Shopping Center, that general area. So that's the map from the plan with the mixed-use town center. Then there's, in the plan, there's also, some visuals, some intent statements, some character descriptions. What would this look like? I'm sure everybody's been to a nice downtown. It hopefully was a good experience. We don't have that in Farragut. We have a void in that regard, and that's what we're trying to incrementally work toward filling, is to fill that void and create something special that quite frankly, I think would significantly increase the marketability and property values in that area that was shown in purple over time, because it would be something that would be unique and something that has been demonstrated to the town as very desired by the public. When we kind of revisited this idea, we've been, since 2012, we've been trying to implement different aspects of the comprehensive plan, and obviously this is one aspect that we've always, been excited about trying to work toward. We're currently working on architectural design standards with a firm from Colorado that's helping the town on those, and also there's currently a branding process that's I think wrapping up in December So we thought that it was a good time to kind of dovetail that together with looking at this mixed-use town center. So we had a workshop on August 13th, and really just kind of discussed the history of this idea, what we currently have, what are some things that we need to address to try to try to work toward bringing about this objective. And we also discussed this as a workshop item last month at the Planning Commission meeting. The feeling was at those meetings that we needed to kind of look at the existing zoning districts and see if we could work with the property owners and try to help steer new developments or substantial redevelopments. This wouldn't affect existing developments. So it only apply to new developments or really substantial redevelopments. In those purple areas that were identified as mixed-use town center, to try to, over time, create a built environment that would be consistent with that vision. So that's what we're trying to do. What I plan to go over with the next few slides are just some specifics that we had kind of outlined. Again, this is just for discussion. We want everybody's input, but what we did was took the C1 zoning district, which most of the mixed-use town center is zoned C1. Some of it is zoned office, and some of it is zoned planned commercial, where the Kroger is. But a vast majority of it is zoned general commercial. And what we tried to do was build a statement in there that added a section to C1 that described what we were trying to do with this mixed-use town center area, and what objective are we trying to accomplish, which I've already kind of identified. And then we looked at the uses that are currently permitted in C1 and tried to look at uses that would be consistent with a mixed-use town center. Most of the uses that are currently permitted in C1 would still be permitted. In fact, there's some additional uses like the potential for residential and mixed use that's not currently permitted in C1 that would be permitted under this draft wording. And something I'd like to talk about are these uses just a little bit and get the public's feedback on that. One of the questions is in a mixed-use town center, the appropriateness or inappropriateness of what's called a big box facility. In the draft wording, again, this is all just for discussion, we do mention that obviously generally recognized retail sales would be permitted and encouraged, but we do cap off the big box type entities to 50,000 square feet in the draft wording. You can see that would encompass many projects, but it would exclude really large, more strip commercial type developments like you see there on the screen. I don't know how you all feel about that as a commission. If you have any thoughts, is that too high? Is that too low? Is it something we shouldn't even mention? Or if anybody in the audience has any thoughts on that? But that's one thing that I wanted to get some discussion on, is how to deal with the big box question.
What we have now is 50,000 square feet.
Well, that's just in this draft wording for the mixed-use town center area.
Right. I think it should be lower than that.
Lower or more?
Lower.
Actually, I think I agree. I'll pick on North Shore Town Center a little bit, and that project's been through a lot of trials and tribulations through the years and different owners. But I think there was a vision there that was far superior than the big Target and the big Publix is there. Even though there's a need for the Target and the Publix, and I'm sure they're delighted to be there. But I think there was a real opportunity that was missed that could have been had. Would it have taken longer? Probably. Was Target and Walmart low-hanging fruit? Probably. But I think if we take this vision of what we're trying to have in a pretty small geographic area in the town of Farragut, so for all those that are watching, this is not something that's across the board. This is in a pretty small, little, tight, constrained area that is pretty much the intersection of Campbell Station and Kingston Pike. I mean, I think the big box stores should be restricted if we're ever going to try to get this. Otherwise, we're going to end up with something real big, and there's plenty of other places for them to go.
How big is a Steinmart store, do you know? Just for purposes of
I
comparison.
don't know if anybody's here. Is that what it is? Okay. Good. Glad you're here. I had
What
no
are
idea.
what are you proposing is the?
I mean, I think 25,000 would be a good number.
I do too. And I think as you read about what some of the large big box retailers are doing today, where they're trying to come out with a new model and get into more of the community concept, I think that's a number that a lot of them are shooting for.
Mm-hmm. Well, the issue with
Walmart did down their UT campuses. Kind
Well,
of trend the other direction now. People tired of walking 5 miles in a store.
the issue with the big boxes is not just the big giant warehouse store. It's the sea of asphalt that they have to support that store.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, and a lot of times it's a 2.5 to 1 ratio, basically. So if you got a 100,000 square foot store, you got to have another 150,000 square feet of asphalt parking lot. And so that's what really would concern me when trying to get. If we're ever going to get there, is it going to happen in my lifetime? I hope so, but I just don't know. But I think today is the opportunity to be able to set some standards and determine what that vision is.
All right, I have a question. Going off of your idea of, like, say Best Buy decides they're going to make themselves smaller and be more of a get this stuff shipped in, and so are we against just the size of it, but or are we saying big box, meaning no way Best Buy can come in? No
I'm talking about size.
I think it's
small
size.
Yeah, I'm not trying to
small footprint, big box could
All right.
work.
No, I'm
you
all
know,
for. I
that's-
mean, national retailers. I mean, they're an employer. They're part of the community as well. So I'm definitely not trying to alienate
No.
anybody based upon what type of retailer they are. I'm just trying to
I just
thinking
wanna
about
clarify
more of a downtown setting, something that would be more compatible with what we're talking about, more compatible with the downtown.
And this is really their foot.
One thing, getting back to this whole overview too, is what we're trying to build here, and it's not going to happen overnight, obviously, is something that's unique and special and that has lasting value. Most strip commercial developments, including Turkey Creek at some point, are going to lose their value. They have a 20 to 25 year lifespan typically. That's not always the case. But what we're trying to build is something that's timeless, that ties to the town's history, that is something, when people visit the town, they remember about Farragut, rather than they just went to Turkey Creek to get some, something there or to eat there. They actually remember, the uniqueness of this community and how it appreciated its community and appreciated its history and tied it in together in this cute little downtown. That's really what we're working toward. So like Noah said, we're trying to, establish some parameters at this point that would not, wouldn't create a problem for trying to move in that direction over time.
One thing that we may want to think about, instead of just making sure we don't get too blanket of approach to the square footage, is let's just say we got to the day where some outside entity, public or private or even Farragut, said, hey, we want to have a performing arts center, which would just, to me, just be magical as a catalyst to help bring other businesses. That one might be larger than 25,000 square feet if you think of all the encompassing square footage. So let's, as we're contemplating all these things, we need to be careful that we don't alienate certain things. That which I think, it might be a community center. It might be something with some sort of an indoor gymnasium. And next thing you know, you're over 25,000 square feet.
Yeah, because those could have a huge parking lot too.
That's true.
Yeah. But, I mean, currently it's worded toward, generally
Retail.
recognized retail.
Right.
But it's a good point. How do the rest of you feel about the big box?
I don't think about, when you're downtown in any location, you don't really see those types of structures and retail spaces. You just don't. They're small little boutique places that you can walk to. We had talked about that, I think, in our workshop, even about the Steinmart area there with Fresh Market. Stores are great, but I don't walk from Steinmart to Fresh Market. Maybe if it was designed a little differently, maybe with lights or sidewalks or something a little different. I know there's sidewalks over there, but if it was structured a little differently, I might. But I think if it was redesigned architecturally, I think that is a nice place to start to me. Even with Steinmart there, which I don't consider that a big box store. But the parking there, I think, even at Christmas time, that parking lot is not even full. So I think it's almost excessive, but.
Well, that would be a good candidate if working with the property owner, if they would be willing to work with us, is to, have some outbuildings,
Right.
and kind of work that, that streetscape a little bit, and then kind of build that, soften up that large sea of asphalt, in the parking lot. It's a very nice development.
Yeah.
But I think that would actually enhance it and make it even more appealing.
Something we may want to think about specifically with Village Green Shopping Center is there is some remnants of the old Walmart space that's there that's vacant. What I wouldn't want to force them to do is say, let's say Steinmart didn't renew their lease. I wouldn't want to force them to say, hey, you have to lease these separately instead of putting them back together. So in that particular scenario, I think that Village Green should have some grandfathering for the way that they're set up, because again, we'd much. Isn't there another 30,000 square feet next to Steinmart?
Well, to me, that would fall under an existing condition. It wouldn't be affected by this. This is for new development or substantial redevelopment. That wouldn't be a redevelopment.
Okay.
So to me, I would apply. I wouldn't have any issue with.
Well, I agree with you. I just wanted to make sure that they understand that we're not trying to force feed them something.
No.
Okay.
This would just be for new development and redevelopment.
I have to be honest. I think what the idea of a performing arts center would be so nice in that area, but not necessarily in what we're considering the downtown area, because it's going to collect cars. It's just going to collect people from so many different areas. I could see maybe like a park, those band
Amphitheater.
Something small like that is more gathers people to walk to it, but like a performing arts centers. And I could see something like that being in that old Kroger, or maybe even at where that Steinmart area is, something not right in there, but right on the edge of it, I think would be almost more ideal, because you don't want to promote the cars coming into that particular area.
I agree with you. However, if you can ever get something like that committed to a project like this,
you take it, yeah.
That's the glue. That's the catalyst that gets everybody else excited. And is that something that maybe a double-decker, just a two-decker parking garage could help solve some of these issues? And maybe the property's so expensive anyway, it's cheaper to go up with parking than it is to spread out. But I wouldn't want to alienate that, because if somebody came to us and wanted to do a performing arts center, that would be a gift.
Yeah, we're not going to say no.
We're not going to say no. So
I understand that.
In my mind also, even though maybe we've talked about just some language in the C1, I really think we need to cohesively look at the land use plan that identifies some PCD as well as some O1 and hit it all at the same time, which does include the Kroger, includes the old Kroger. And so I can't really necessarily say that something's appropriate in the old Kroger that wouldn't be appropriate over next to the town hall, because it's all identified as that area. So, but again, that's why we're talking about. Maybe there's areas that shouldn't be identified that are identified.
I would not like to see a gymnasium in the middle of the town. Or like on the periphery of the downtown area, okay, but not in the middle.
Have you had a professional basketball team? I'm being facetious.
Yeah.
Well, there's a YWCA, there's a
That may
YMCA
create more
downtown
problems.
Knoxville.
Well,
I
the
mean,
key to a successful downtown is to get people there.
Right.
And you're going to have to deal with the residential component. You're going to have to be comfortable with a lot of residential in that area, that they can walk to and support these businesses.
And
People,
might
yeah.
I add, a gym doesn't have to be huge. You can have one for 46 or 6,000 square feet. Just letting you know.
Well, no, again, I'm just throwing out ideas about this whole 25,000 square feet. I think it makes a lot of sense, but we need to, and let's hope somebody comes to us with some grandiose idea that could be the core or the catalyst that gets all the other development rolling. Again, we can always change it. It's a dynamic process, and so in a few years, if we had somebody and it didn't quite fit, we'll figure out a way. Either it does or it doesn't, or maybe we push it out on the fringe.
No, I think as we start something like this, we probably need to err on the side of being just slightly more restrictive. Because it's a heck of a lot easier to loosen up later than it is to try to tighten up later. And I think with the direction we're trying to go to create this sense of community, we're probably better off to try to keep our arms around it a little bit tighter to begin with.
In this downtown area, we're talking about people living above businesses. Do these parking requirements cover that? I'll say if the second and third floors are residential.
We'll get to that when we talk about parking, but there is the language in what we drafted is taken from the town center district. And it doesn't address a single-story building, and it needs to. That's something we need to have in whatever we end up doing. But it provides for a gradation of parking space requirements for first, second, third floor. So, and that was very carefully determined when we wrote that town center district. I mean, we looked at other communities. We looked at we had the Main Street director for the state. She worked a lot with us on that from her experiences. So that town center district was given a whole lot of thought. And really, if somebody were to come in and have a project that was more than 15 acres, I would strongly recommend they just rezone it to town center district and not deal with this language, because that has language that would apply to a more planned development that would have new streets, a gridded street system, kind of like what was originally, envisioned on the property to the west. It's a complete development. What we're trying to do, I think, with this is to address these smaller situations and just try to encourage a plan of development that would not be inconsistent with a mixed-use town center. So, does everybody feel that 25 is the number to get in there? Do you have any?
Does anybody in the audience have any? Can you?
Yeah.
Please get up there and tell us who you are.
My name is Ian Moffitt. I'm with Whole Rob Commercial Real Estate. I was actually sent here by the owner of the Conoco, who I represent, at the corner of Kimball Station and Kingston Pike. Basically, what I was saying, if they're any larger than that, they're already going to be at Turkey Creek, so they're too close together anyway, as far as the retailer's concerned. So I don't think you're going to run into that being so close to Turkey Creek as you are, just from a practical demographic standpoint. That was my point. But I mean, would now be appropriate to talk for my owner
Sure.
regarding the Conoco station? He has asked me to come here and just explain his position on things, which is, he is not for the zoning or the districting on his particular property. He feels that his particular property being 1.24 acres is probably too small to accomplish the needs that you are looking to accomplish anyway. The highest and best use for that property being at the corner of a 40,000 average car per day street and a 30,000 average car per day street, is something that's going to tailor towards that. The current zoning that's on the map is C3, which is commercial.
C1.
It's C1?
Yeah.
So you all rezoned that from C3 already?
We don't have any C3.
Okay, so
C1.
the zoning map was wrong on KGIS.
Yeah.
But as is, without the district, there's a varied amount of uses that are allowed there. Is that correct?
Well, I think it actually, what we're proposing, it does remove certain uses that would be typically inconsistent with a mixed-use town center, like like an automobile-oriented type business, for example. But it opens it up for more flexible placement of the building. It allows you to go more vertical than the current C1, and it also encourages a mixture of uses. It allows for residential, which is not currently allowed in C1. So there's some kind of a wash. I think there's things in this ordinance that expand property rights substantially, quite frankly, because it allows you to do a lot of things, and they may not be comfortable with it. We haven't gotten that far yet,
Sure.
but it allows you to do a lot of things that you couldn't do right now.
Well, and I think, I understand where you're going for, but like from a practical standpoint, throwing up a 3-story at the corner of Kingston Pike and Campbell Station just wouldn't work. I mean, from a financial standpoint, from a visibility standpoint, from going from Kingston Pike to Campbell Station, bringing that property or the building up towards the Kingston Pike itself would, limit visibility as well. And I mean, I think we talked about even putting the parking behind the building. And so, what the owner is fearful of is not being able to, get the best price for that property because of the limitations being placed on the zoning. And we've already lost one deal because of it.
I strongly believe what we're trying to do here is going to do nothing but increase property values. It may take a little time, but if you're doing something unique and special that the community has demonstrated they want, I think the end result is going to be you're going to enhance the marketability. That's just my opinion. I may be wrong, but I strongly believe that.
I mean, could you not maybe go towards, the architectural style first as opposed to limiting the use and kind of move towards that?
Well, we're not asking anybody to build a 3-story building there. What we're trying to do is, it would have to be patterned to the site. I mean, a 3-story building may be inappropriate for that property, but we're not asking you to do that.
Understood.
We're just asking for a development that would be consistent with the character of a mixed-use town center. It could be a single-story building. So, there's some flexibility there. The building, in my opinion, would need to be closer to the road, and the parking would need to be not emphasized like it would be in a traditional strip commercial type of development. But I don't think that's a bad thing. You see it down at North Shore with the Kazzi's, for example, restaurant there, a new brick building, and it's 3 stories, I think. I've got a picture of it I can show later, and it does quite well.
Well, and I understand.
Right up at the road.
Right, and I represent that owner as well. But the point of that is you're not talking about. I mean, you've got North Shore, and then you've got a boulevard type situation.
Yeah.
Not 70,000 cars going by that site.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're trying to do is just get some input from you all to try to figure out, what it is we're going to be able to do there, who we need to target as far as a potential new owner, and how to steer that property. Just because, at this point, having lost what we think was a great use and would have added a ton of value, we're kind of, we don't know what to do.
Are you at liberty to say what that business was?
No, it would have been the first. It would have been the first location for, the area of Knoxville. I mean, I don't represent that company, so I'm not at liberty to say.
Is it like a restaurant or a?
Problem was.
I'm sorry.
You don't know what their problem was.
They had a drive-through.
There you go.
So.
Well, that's another thing we talked about too, because we talked about restricting the number of certain types of businesses within that footprint, because we've got so many banks everywhere. Do we really need another bank in that spot, for instance? I mean, is there a way that we can, do we want to do that? Do we want to restrict?
Well, I mean,
Like the
banks,
drive-through
pharmacies,
type-
restaurants.
Right.
I mean,
Right,
all
the
those fit into that
drive-through related.
category.
You don't see many drive-throughs in downtown areas, I don't think. Was
You
there
also
I've
don't
been
see
to?
70,000 cars going through a downtown area. I mean, that's kind of what we're saying is, like, if you look at how you all have laid it, and it kind of encompasses just this parcel, and I guess it's the Tenova parcel behind it, on the north, was that the northeast side of the intersection?
Yeah, I think it goes further than that. It maybe it's 3 or 4 parcels out.
Right.
It may go all the way up to rural metro. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think so.
But you've got Campbell Station and Kingston Pike, and then the green space that have basically captures this parcel. So there's nowhere to go with this.
Well, one thing that bothers me with that whole intersection is the fact that there is a lot of traffic. And I used to use the gas station that was there, but I quit because I couldn't get in and out there. And so the traffic is an issue on this whole corner. And if we come up with something that is more pedestrian friendly,
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. If you have us to continue with the strip commercial there, you're just going to exacerbate the traffic. If you can develop something that it has a residential component that people can actually walk to and support those businesses, then you've lessened the degree of traffic congestion that could have otherwise occurred with a more traditional type of development. So, I mean, mixed, like Nashville is doing this right now. You probably know this. They rezoned their whole downtown in one fell swoop, and they right now, I just was out there 2 weeks ago on a tour, and they've got 4,000 residential units under construction within 1/8 of a mile of the Titans football stadium in the Gulch area. And their buildings are right up against very heavily traveled roads. The Korean, I forgot the name of that road that they created there, but it runs right through downtown. And it's got a huge amount of traffic. So, I mean, it can function. I think it can function very well, but you do have to have that vision, and you have to, kind of work toward it. It'll take a long time, probably. I mean, we'd love to have somebody come in and just do one big downtown development. That would be awesome. And then maybe that'll happen someday. But what we're trying to do right now is just to incrementally create a plan of development that would not be inconsistent with what could happen in the future.
and with your piece of property, it's a prime, with you wanting to sell it and it being available for redevelopment, it's a prime piece of property for this to happen to.
Yeah. It's got a very scenic area to the east that could be, depending on how you designed it, you can make it a real amenity. So, I mean, it's got a lot of potential.
Does anybody have any other thoughts as far as
Questions?
use, or? I mean, I guess what we're looking for is I mean, we understand what you're going for, and we understand the need for it. I think, just from a commercial real estate agent's point of view, maybe looking at siphoning off some of that traffic coming into that intersection may slow it down and allow for more walking friendly type environment. That 5 lanes on each side.
Yeah, we
tough to cross.
We talked about that with Winston and Associates when they updated the land use plan, and we all know those 2 roads are heavily traveled, and to look at it really comprehensively, I mean, we'd love to have a underground or above ground crossing of the road someday, and really look at the traffic flow on those 2 roads as you're coming into that intersection to try to make it more inviting to pedestrians, because that's going to be real important for the long-term success of this, I think.
So just so I'm understanding this and so I can kind of tailor my marketing towards this, so y'all are looking for is it retail or is it medical? Is it office with
It could be
residential? I
It
mean,
could be any of
what are we looking for here?
We do need to talk about the drive-through lane while we have that. In the draft wording, we do not provide for that, businesses that have a drive-through, because it's typically inconsistent with the mixed-use town center. But that's something we need to talk about right now, because we're just going through this as a very early draft of one approach to try to incrementally try to bring about this vision. So I don't know, how do you all feel about a drive-through in this area?
On that intersection, isn't there probably the reason that gas station failed was because it was a drive-through?
No, they actually sold to a different company, and he decided to keep 4 of them, technically in Knoxville, and we've sold 2 so far. One being in front of Baker Peters as well. So, I mean, to be honest with you, if I'm looking at this from a strict commercial standpoint, with all the traffic going by and with the demographics that Farragut has, I mean, it screams retail.
Well, I'm not. I'm just commenting on drive-through because, as Betty mentioned, that as time went on and as traffic increased more and more, less and less traffic went into that gas station because of it.
Well, I'm not going to argue that you can't turn left out of that place, regardless. And I'd say probably TDOT would take away the first 2 entrances off of Kingston Pike and Campbell Station anyway. So you're only left with the 2, furthest points from the intersection. I mean, I think that's a given. But as far as drive-through, I mean, I think that you could probably take that site and design it much better than it's designed now. I mean, I think, you're looking at a 1980 gas station that, wasn't designed for that amount of traffic.
Mark, I'll give you an answer to your question. I think with the proper design, a drive-through is acceptable. We don't want them everywhere, but I think, I've seen examples of a drive-through in a community that, quite frankly, people don't even know it's there, other than the clients that head to that area. And it's not always a bad thing. If you have them in abundance, it gets a little overwhelming. But again, I think with design standards, everything we're looking to put in place, that we could really make it where it would bring value to the community we're trying to create.
Okay.
And this is really the only parcel on that intersection that has access to Kingston Pike and Campbell Station. It's the only one.
Yes.
So.
Well, kind of.
Well, the other one across the street, but that one is even more nerve-wracking than that piece of property.
Well, at grade level then.
Yeah, at grade level, yeah.
I guess for this special area, I would. We talked a lot about it when we had the other development.
Yes.
And it was a little more spread out, and we talked about how the parking would go for that concept, for the overall concept.
Yes.
And we did talk about a bank. Of course, that was also
Bank and pharmacy.
Banks,
yes, it was.
I think we're trying to stimulate, basically some discrete parking that's got to be incorporated in this, and the mobility of folks within that, both residential as well as people that come out. If we're looking at a dedicated core like that, there's plenty of opportunities everywhere else for a drive-through. You want people to park as kind of like a destination and walk to that bank, walk next door to the yogurt store or whatever else is in that community. So I would not like to see drive-throughs in that area.
And with all due respect, though, I mean, you're talking about a vision that may be 15, 20 years down the road.
No,
I mean,
expressing my opinion.
Could be.
Right. No, and I understand that. I'm just saying that, for this particular property owner, how do you tell them that, look, this is your property, but we're going to tell you how and what to do with it, when you sell it.
That's what zoning is in the first place.
Right.
Right. And when he bought it, it was zone C1.
Well, like I say, I think what we're trying to do, I think, is going to add value for that property owner. Now, he may not see it that way right now, but I think people that want to do a development in a community, they like communities that care about their community and that have a vision for what they want to do. And this is a manifestation of that, I think. With the right person and the right development, I think they would welcome this kind of approach. But it's going to have to be marketed a little bit different. That's just my opinion. But I think it's not going to be taking value from their property. I think it's ultimately going to be enhancing it. How do the rest of you feel about a drive-through? Because we need to have some direction.
Let me add a remark. I mean,
yes,
we have to be also mindful of the fact that I'll say in that area, if you look at what we have in the HUD, down next to China Pearl and
yes,
our house both have a drive-through.
yes,
and it's rather discreet. Discreet.
Yes.
When I say a preference, I'm looking at more of this hardcore that's surrounding this town hall area, not even though that's shown a purple area down there, that's more toward an open development with lots of pavement out front.
Yep.
And those businesses that have the drive-throughs, when I'm there, I park and I go in. I don't see those that's not their primary part of their business is a drive-through. Like McDonald's, most of the time you're going to drive through. And and especially the pizza, Papa Murphy's, is that Papa Murphy's has a drive-through there? I don't think I've
They don't
ever
have a
seen
drive-through.
They don't have one.
No. What's the other one that has the drive-through?
The
Firehouse.
Firehouse,
Okay.
sandwich place.
That's, yeah.
I think there's places within our city limits or our town limits to have drive-throughs, and I don't think this particular core, if we're trying to develop a downtown area, I don't think drive-throughs would be appropriate. I think you want to encourage, like what Ed said, I think you want to encourage people to park their car and get out and walk and go into these boutique stores or jewelry stores or restaurants or whatever the case may be. I just think having drive-throughs, which I think of typically as just banks and pharmacies and fast food places. I think we have a whole bunch of those down there. I think it'd be great to have a diverse, buildings and space and in an area that we're trying to build up as a downtown. I would discourage them personally, in my opinion, but.
I think if we want to have pedestrian, we do not need drive-throughs and pedestrians in the same area.
Well said.
I agree with everything that was said. I also feel like that we've somewhat taken this particular parcel and we've identified it as part of this great downtown, where you could walk from one shop to another shop, and I just can't see that happening on their site. Putting the traffic aside, just the distance from either having to go, let's say, if West End got redeveloped or if the property next to the town hall got redeveloped, I do feel somewhat to a certain degree that we pulled the rug out from under them with the C1 zoning district. Again, the architecture would be paramount because it is an entry to the town, and finding a way to disguise the drive-through or to place it on the site in such a manner that it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Can it be done? I don't know. But I just...
Well, no, there is an example just within, 100 feet probably of your building. First Utility District has it, right?
LCUB.
LCUB.
Well, you're right. LCUB has a drive-through, and you don't know unless you go around to the back. And again, I'm wherever the core of our downtown may be, it's probably not going to be on that northeast corner. The core of the downtown, I don't think drive-throughs have any place. They're not part of the vision, and I can't see them being applicable really in any way, whether it's a bank or a pharmacy. And I know this was a big hang-up a few years ago when we talked about TCD, but I'd love to see that site redeveloped in such a manner that The architecture was consistent with what we're talking about. The Kingston Pike and the Campbell Station access was improved. It's never going to be perfect. I don't know if it's a combination of right in, right outs. It might be just because there's not a lot of frontage, but nevertheless, when I think about the folks that are looking for a high-profile corner, there's going to be a lot of folks that are looking for a high-profile corner that need to drive through. And I don't know if it's a bank or fast food, and I hope it's not a, big fast food with a bunch of colorful architecture. I'd really like to see something out of brick that's part of the entry of the town of Farragut. And I'd love to see some middle ground if they had somebody that was appropriate and was willing to kind of jump through some hoops architecturally and with a site plan and with some landscaping and taking that drive-through and putting it back where it's out of sight, out of mind. Personally, I could support that.
How do you write that in?
I don't know how to write that in. And again, this is not about trying to create a variance for one particular piece of parcel. I think this particular parcel has a hardship that we have placed on them that is an additional layer of rules that we're saying, well, yep, you're C1, you got to meet this criteria, and you're part of this, which you got to meet this criteria. I'm not necessarily real optimistic that gas station will ever go away unless we loosen up a little bit on that parcel. It may be an empty, and I may be wrong, maybe it's a medical building or somebody, but I seriously doubt somebody's going to plop down a big chunk of money for that corner just to build an office. It's too high profile. It does scream retail. Those are the folks that want that kind of visibility with that kind of traffic. I don't know Ian from Adam, and so it has nothing to do with Ian or that, but it has to do with being consistent. And the site that we dealt with last month, it's getting a little closer to our core. I'm starting to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit with that one. I was alone last month, but I'm starting to kind of warm up to it, and I understand it again is about being consistent, but I really think that this site warrants some flexibility due to the hardship, and that's how we would explain it instead of having to worry about open Pandora's box and, well, they did it, so let's open up a drive-through for somebody else. I do think that there is some potential middle ground if we had an applicant. I don't think we have an applicant today, but if we had an applicant today that didn't give us a lot of pushback on our architecture and our site plan, I would like to see the building a little closer to one of the roads and get the parking and somehow try to figure out how to get that drive-through in the back if that was so desired. But I'd really like to, I think if we have any opportunity for that site to get redeveloped in the short term, when I say short term, in the next 1, 2, or 3 years, I think they're going to come back to us with some sort of a plan that's going to require us revisiting this, and whether it's a variance or a change, I don't know what it is. But that's my, I'd like to say 2 cents, but that was probably my 10 cents worth.
I have a question based on what Noah's saying. Does that property belong in this town center?
Yes.
I mean, presently, but does it belong with, thinking about what he's saying, should we have that in there? Should we look at that map and consider whether that actually belongs in our vision of the town center district?
Well, it can be looked at, yes. I mean, it could be looked at. At that intersection, I think all 4 corners are important because that is the anchor of your mixed-use town center. Now, providing some flexibility that would kind of address Noah's point, I think is probably a good thing. I don't know how if drive-through, I mean, to me, putting a drive-through at any of those 4 corners would be a problem for a mixed-use town center. That's just my opinion, because it is the intersection.
You're saying it's the traffic.
It's the origin of the downtown right there. So
I guess what I'm envisioning, going off of what Noah's saying, is if you move the building closer to the corner,
yes,
and you tuck the drive-through where you can't see it.
And the parking, really. Ideally, we put the
parking
in
the
the
parking.
that may be fine.
You can't,
yeah.
But then it leads to this question: how do you put that into the zoning?
Well, there's some language in the TCD that is pretty, that really addresses drive-throughs, because that was something that was provided for banks and pharmacies. And then we may want to be consistent with that, although I think, like you say, that's probably more of a retail property. But, having something with a traditional drive-through, like a fast food place, would really compromise any development of any movement forward toward this vision, I think, at that location. Now, if you could arrange it and have the architecture consistent and placement of the building and the drive-through maybe just, hidden for the most part, I don't personally have a problem with that and giving some flexibility to accomplish that. I don't know, how marketable that approach would be. It may be very marketable. But if you could arrange it like that where you really do meet the intent and the character of a mixed-use town center, I think that would be doable.
Well, and, basically from a marketing standpoint, instead of an absolute no, I can always just say maybe. We just, say you've got to go in front of the town of Farragut and work with them to see if it'll work.
We need to have some parameters in place so that
Right.
they know what the expectations and the requirements are, because we can't just review it case by case basis. We do have to have some basic requirements and parameters in place, like
Consistencies.
the drive-through shall not be visible from adjacent public rights of ways. If you can do that with screening and whatever, then that that may work. It may be consistent.
Can we, at some point in time, can you get us the wording that was used in the town center that we came up with several years ago? So we can review that?
It might be pretty similar about trying to keep those drive-throughs hidden.
Yes, it does talk about that.
And obviously that's going to be a tough site on a corner,
Yes,
trying to
it
protect
is.
it from all right-of-ways. But
Yes.
again, if you could eliminate a canopy, that's going to go a long way. You could, eliminate big obnoxious menu boards and, try to figure out some other way. I don't know if actually I do know the restaurant concept that he was talking about. It is a little bit different than a traditional fast food. So I don't know if that's something where you just call ahead and you tell them your name and you get your food and you go home, or something you order there. But it seems like there might be some ways, and that's what we were trying to get away from. We didn't want to see a canopy, and we didn't want to see all these lights and a big menu board and a speaker where you yell into the speaker and they yell back at you. Those are the things that we were trying to get away from in eliminating these drive-throughs. Because again, it's about some person sitting in their car idling, which goes against the complete grain of a downtown.
Right.
It's about appearance and it's about function, is what the downtown's about. It's how you present it and how it functions. If it compromises either of those, it's not going to be successful. You can have beautiful buildings, but if it doesn't function, it doesn't work, there's not foot traffic there, it's not going to make it. I'm from a downtown that struggles because they don't have enough residential that's within walking distance of those businesses that are trying to they're barely surviving.
Well, and you almost kind of see that with kind of what they're trying to do down on campus with, McDonald's remodeling to a more walking friendly. I'm not saying McDonald's is going here. I'm just saying, you've got kind of a push towards that where these guys have kind of conformed to what they're looking for that downtown, more walker friendly area. And I think that I could find a user to do that, and they would want to adhere to any architectural standards that may be. It's just, my point is please take a look at this particular site and the assets that it does have, and think about whether or not it is applicable to that town center zoning.
Well, again, I and I know I'm in the minority here, but I think when people think of a drive-through, they automatically think of as Noah was mentioning, the big menu board and the speaker and everything. And that's not the case. I mean, really, the three places that were mentioned in that area, Firehouse Subs, China Pearl, and LCUB, I think most people wouldn't even know there's a drive-through there. And two of the three, I wouldn't even go to if they didn't have a drive-through, because that's, for me, it's convenient. And I think back to when my children were little. you know, after you've spent a day in a pedestrian area, by the time you get your kids in the car, the last thing you want to do is stop, haul them back out of there again. There's a few places you want to go that have a drive-through so you can get your stuff and go home. So not every drive-through is bad, and not every drive-through destroys a community. And sometimes if you don't have drive-throughs, it causes people to not come downtown. You know, I grew up in a small town. There's 2 or 3 places that have drive-throughs, and they bring as much value to the downtown as the businesses that don't have it. So,
Well, you know, just to kind of piggyback on that point and say that, you know, the downtown is created here, you know, in the spot that you're taking care of. You know, ultimately, the last little parcel you're going to go buy out of the downtown, is that parcel. Maybe you pick it up on your way out of the downtown area, but via the drive-through. You know, like you said, it's the first thing you're going to see going in, but it's also the last thing you're going to see going out. So, I mean, I think there's ways to go about it, and that's why I'm trying to figure out what you all think to how to tackle that.
yeah, I believe I know who was looking at that piece of property, and quite frankly, I think as a community we've lost a business that would have brought great value to that area.
If we go with the drive-through, they need to be in basically non-pedestrian areas.
So there's no intermingling of pedestrian and cars.
Well, I think, there's one thing I think, when I really think about this core, and I don't want to belabor this point much more, but to me, there's a difference between just a pure transactional thing that I'm wanting to take care of. And if I can combine that transaction with an experience, and we're looking for that experience quotient to go with the transaction in this core area. I'm not saying that we would look at something discrete, but but again, I think really protecting that core is vital to what our concept is.
Yeah, let's think about that whole section there on the east side of Campbell Station Road. Not now, but let's look at 25 years from now, because that's what we're here for. We're planning, we're working on the future. That area all backs up to a very scenic floodplain area. It's got a lot of opportunity at redevelopment stage to be something really unique and very pedestrian oriented that would very much fit in with a core of a mixed-use town center. It would take a long time. A lot of those businesses are relatively new, but you know, if you put in the first piece of the puzzle, then it makes it easier to build on that when those parcels do come up for redevelopment, which they will at some point in the future. And that's really what we're trying to deal with right here. I think
Is that green space private ownership, or is that town or county? I don't remember.
I think it's all on the property owner to the east. It's not the town, so we own the property near the high school entrance.
But the floodplain and the creek.
Yeah, those are not the town property there.
Yeah, but we also got, you know, where we, you know, just to the east of where the gas station was. Remember all the discussion we had relative to that wooded area and the creek going up through there, and the severe development that some people wanted to put there, and even threatening many warehouses at one time. Okay, so there's a lot to be said for that property that's adjacent to this, as well was how they integrate.
It could all be tied in with the
integrate
right long-term vision. Yeah, it could all be tied in. I think that property might be a good candidate for some mixed-use residential, because you got the schools just right adjacent to it. It's not in the MUTC, but it's an area that could help support the mixed-use town center.
This is what I struggle with that property. If you want to take advantage of that view in the back, you move the building closer to that property. But if you want that nice looking view from the streetscape, you want to put the property to the front. Either way, you're going to have some parking available. Because
Sure.
of the location of that, you can't just, it's not going to be purely pedestrian.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what I struggle with when you have that. And if you do move it to the front, you could conceivably put a drive-through and no one would know it was there. But then you can't take advantage of it's just are we setting them up so that you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't?
I don't think so. I think it's up to creative design.
Right.
I mean, you see it everywhere. It's just there's different ways to do it. You just got some existing opportunities there with that floodplain that you could capture with some outdoor seating or a little plaza or gathering space back in that area, and I think it would be kind of neat to work on a design for something like that property. Just come up with something that's unique, it's consistent with the town center on that small parcel.
You could actually put the outdoor seating above the drive-through. I mean, there'd be a way to manage that.
Well, maybe.
I've seen that done before.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you even went
Awesome.
the length of Kingston Pike on that parcel, you could put a patio down towards the green space and have your drive-through up towards
Right.
Campbell Station. I mean, there's a way to do it, I believe. It's just, when people are approaching me, I just need to know how to guide them in order to, one, make an offer on a tremendously expensive piece of property, and two, is it the right use for what you're looking for? And up until I don't know, I didn't know how to proceed, and I don't know. That's why I'm here to try to figure out, what can I do? I mean, what would you all like to see? It's ultimately my job to handle it for the owner, but obviously not only do we have to satisfy the owner's financial concerns, but I've also got to make sure that it's satisfying the town of Farragut as well.
Does anybody else have any more questions or comments on this particular piece? And have we given?
So with the drive-through, maybe with the proper design, we might be able to have some flexibility in there.
Well, if you can get out to us the wording that we had
Yeah.
for the town center
We'll
development.
probably
that
put
might
that in
give
the
us
next
a-
draft of this.
Right.
That's got some good language.
Yes.
Some of it is like Noah said, it's a little more targeted toward a larger development, so some of that will have to be patterned to be more flexible. But I think the bottom line is that the drive-through be indiscreet. That really is the bottom line, that you wouldn't really know it's there. It doesn't stand out like a traditional fast food place where you got the ordering play, and it has that kind of auto-oriented feel to it. So we can try to work on some language with that.
What about parking being discreet?
Well, you could do
Is
that.
that a goal, or is that I don't.
Well, it's up to you all. I mean, what do you all think about in this mixed-use town center, how buildings and parking should be arranged? So we're proposing that the parking not be any closer to the road than the building. And that gives you a lot of flexibility. You could have the parking, parallel with the building. J.C. Penney right now is a huge development that meets that requirement. The parking is not closer to Parkside Drive than the building is. And you can also, soften and screen parking lots, with, and maybe not on this site, but some other sites, berms and landscaping, maybe some low-impact development applications to add some visual interest to the parking lot, so it's not just a big black area, that it incorporates some pavers in there, make it look more visually appealing, kind of like what Enterprise did. They've got a mixture of conventional asphalt, but they've also got those permeable pavers in there that they used them actually so they wouldn't have to have a stormwater detention basin. So it was a win-win. It provides a much more attractive project. It kind of breaks up that the appearance of the parking lot. So there's lots of things you can do with the design. Again, you got to be a little bit more creative, maybe think outside the box a little bit.
When we're talking about parking too, are we talking different numbers than what we're talking for a big box type store?
Well, parking's something we need to talk about here in a minute. Because the only thing we've gotten in the language right now is just parking that would address a more than one-story building. And we need to talk about that, but we'll get to that.
Madam Chairman, I have a request. I need to use the restroom. And so I probably am not the only one.
Does anybody need a break? Besides Noah?
We'll take a 5-minute recess.
I've been holding it for a while. I can't hold it any longer.
Do we have a second?
Yeah.
I characterize it as destruction.
Interrupt me earlier if you need to.
No, it's fine.
Wow, I did too.
Rick, how are you? Oh, doing all right.
I was.
But we quit going. We did not.
Yep.
Goes through the center.
They were very upset.
Yeah.
Some of the people that go in there maybe are.
I didn't know they had a drive.
But
Pick up my
they were inside. They wanted us to go there.
I've been in there. Yeah. And I'm usually, I can only think of one other time there was a car.
What was the one that was planning on maybe coming? Oh, yeah, they have them in Wisconsin. And that is also like our house. Most people don't use the Oh, really? Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, you can call in and order. That's good.
Yeah, that was the rest of the coffee. I'm hungry. I'm about ready to run to Wagner's to get a bite to eat.
It's right across from the cemetery and everything.
I usually do. I didn't tonight. I'm hungry. Can we order a pizza? Do we have a
pizza?
I'm getting hungry. I'm starting to have flashbacks to the old days.
2020.
Yeah.
Like the good old days.
Yeah, I remember I used to say, can we order breakfast?
See, 20, 25 years, you just have your drone go pick it up anyway.
Yeah, that's it.
Or they'll send their drone
Just open
to
the
give
door,
it to you.
send it in. I'm hungry. Could use a vending machine.
Drive your Segway down.
Make decisions about this stuff? Or?
We need to pick up the pace.
I know. I'm unclear what we're
Much
supposed
better.
to be trying to accomplish.
He just wants some guidance on how to tweak this language.
Yeah.
We've got to go a little faster.
Well, we got off on one piece of property. That way.
Yeah, good point.
Was that, and you've been here a long time, was that fairground before that gas station?
Oh, there was an actual gas station there that predates.
Oh, really?
It was honest to God gas station. It's 2 service bays. The old.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It faced King. And of course, you got to remember there wasn't a red light
Yeah.
at Campbell Station.
Did they take the gas tanks out?
Without their own.
But that gas station was the old traditional gas station that had, kind of the office end here and had 2 bays.
I'll be done.
And then had the service islands out here on Kingston Pike side. There was nothing on this side.
Wow. I'll be darned.
And it was I think it was a Phillips 66, even back then. But it was a local owned, it wasn't a chain thing. It was one back when you had the full service island and
Back in the day.
Guys came out and
Gas was
pumped your
25
gas,
cents a
gave you your
gallon.
free glass or something.
You're not that old.
I used to have all the giveaways. Of course, they used to have gas wars too, and it was
Oh, yeah, we're ready
But that predated, there was no White Store and all that. There was no Campbell Station extension.
Discussed as far as I mean.
We can't, I mean, I feel like, can we not restrict the number of certain types of businesses downtown?
Well, they restricted pubs.
Well, but how many banks do we have?
Restrict the number of banks at some point. We'll lock it off at an even dozen.
You can with liquor
Alcohol.
stores,
You
because
gotta
there's a license.
You gotta diversify your shopping opportunities or whatever,
Yeah, but you say
retail
that,
space.
and then Southeast Bank came in, and they are gung-ho on Farragut. They're ready to support events, and so.
Which bank was that?
That's great.
Southeast Bank.
Southeast.
I see another bank going up, gonna explode. And the funny thing about it is people aren't going into banks anymore. Everything's done through your phone.
Well, that one is,
That's check through your phone.
That's their corporate center.
Ridiculous. That little community bank went away though, didn't it?
Well, it's hard to close
Doing a dance in the parking lot.
I'm ready.
I'm going to call the meeting back to order, and Mark, how much more do we have?
Well,
items do you want us to go over?
Yeah, Tommy, did you have something?
I'm sure that all left turns are totally illegal.
I'm Tommy Van with the West End Shopping Center, and I've been waiting a couple hours, I guess, to ask this question, but I'd kind of like to know exactly what you all envision for a downtown. You want something like Market Square in Knoxville? Is that kind of what your long-term goal is?
I'd say on a smaller scale, something,
Well, yeah.
something like down at, I mean, this is just my opinion, y'all. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, but something like what they've tried to do there at the entrance to the North Shore Town Center. That kind
What they've started,
Still,
that's
yeah,
small,
something similar to that. I don't know if I'm on the right track there, but it wouldn't be a market square because it's just.
But I mean, would you like to have a square?
I think a square is a real important element in a downtown because it's a pedestrian gathering place. It's a activity space, and you need those kinds of amenities in a real vibrant downtown.
I think some of the examples that they gave us when they were here with the
and they looked at
down,
your all's
right.
We met with them when they were here.
I think some of the examples that they had of other places that they had been and worked with, and other places that they just gave examples of, also. And it's not necessarily that it has to look old by any means.
No. Well, this is just that's just kind of a snapshot from the plan itself of just kind of visually what the character would be.
I know one of the things when we were doing the town center development, a lot of pictures were brought in of places like Morristown and Greenville.
Yes.
There were some places in South Carolina which a lot of the towns down there have the railroad track running through the middle, and their towns, there are buildings on either side that have been there for eons, and they're quaint, but they were old, and I don't think we necessarily, want it to look old, and we don't want a railroad track going down the middle of it, but it was.
We want it to have an appearance that has lasting value.
Timeless was the word that we kept using.
Yes, I think we want that, but it doesn't have to look old. That's one advantage the town has, is that we don't have a downtown, so we've got kind of a clean slate to work from. So that's a good thing. We can kind of hopefully learn from some mistakes that other communities have made. Rick and I were talking about parking is a huge issue, as everybody knows, when you go downtown, any downtown. Yeah. So that really needs to be seriously looked at.
One place that we saw lots of pictures of, and I think a couple of us maybe actually drove through the town, was Swanee, Georgia.
Yeah. That's what I was just going to say.
Which is I don't know now how long that's been since all that came about, but
Probably not much more than 10, 15 years. Beautiful community.
Well, I think you might have talked to Sam, my partner, this week. Before we even got your letter, we had talked about going ahead and engaging a architect for some preliminary work on the center, and I'm going to give him a little bit of guidance of what we want to look at long term in redevelopment. But
I really would encourage you to go on the Sewanee, Georgia website. It's a relatively new community, and to be honest, it was probably the blueprint for most of our discussions when we did the town center district. And I think it'll give you a great visual as to what we're really looking at in the long run. It's really laid out unbelievably well. It it's got I'll use the term flow to it for pedestrians, but yet it has for the residents.
Urban community.
It's a planned community, and I tell you, they just did it as close to perfect as I've ever seen.
We'll do that.
And your area,
we've got a lot
nice.
of room down there, and obviously some of the buildings we would like to incorporate in what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, if you could get
if
more,
we had unlimited money, and we could, we could build what you want tomorrow, I guess. But I just wanted to make sure I had kind of an idea exactly what you all.
Do you think you are better able to visualize that now from listening?
Well, I'm going to look at that website, but I mean, the architect, that's what he does.
See, stuff like that, Tommy, that's in Renaissance there, but just, that's nice because it's got a real nice outdoor area. It was thought about on the front end, worked into the project. This is out at North Shore Town Center. Again, that's kind of a smaller scale. I'm not saying that's exactly what we would want to see, but that just kind of visually gives you an indication of.
And I remember the pictures that they showed us when they were doing the plan from your development, and what they had, I thought was very good. Do you have pictures of that still, Mark?
Yeah, we probably have some.
I thought they had done some very nice renditions of what could be done in your area.
I'm sure part of it, you're exactly right, but part of it we're going to have to take into account what's there.
And
I mean, to make it feasible. It's got to be feasible economically.
True.
Yes. And
that was one thing that I remember I kept asking about is, this is great, but it costs money. But
a lot of it.
Yeah.
But
some of it you can do kind of, and you need to do it incrementally. But look at the low-hanging fruit first. Look at the landscaping. Look at how you arrange outdoor spaces. Do you have places that are gathering places that make it a lively center, that's something that could be easily incorporated into an existing development? Or then maybe if you did have a building that you were wanting to construct, we'd move it up close to West End Avenue.
Right.
And start that first piece of the puzzle with those buildings, that would be more consistent with a mixed-use town center.
You have a great area to be
with the schools there. Yeah.
Walk it.
Yes.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
I have done that. I've parked when it used to be Food Line, and gone over to TCBY.
That's one advantage the town
and
has.
I wanted to tell you, I divided that store so you don't have to worry about the 25,000.
But you have a great area there to do that walkability.
And we've got a lot of, and the town's always been big on pedestrian facilities. So North Shore Town Center is a nice development, but once you get out on North Shore Road, there's nowhere to go.
Right.
But here, it's busy roads. I definitely agree with you, and that does need to be looked at. But you do have pedestrian facilities in all directions that in some cases go a very long way, and it's all interconnected. So, you know, those are assets that the town has currently that could be worked into this.
Were you envisioning, this is a question because I wasn't involved at that point, like a mixed-use residential in that area?
I
Is
think
that something that has
they even have
potential
that.
there?
On the second, third floor, whatever.
Yeah, that's good.
I would encourage you to go look at a couple of these places. There's one just outside of Asheville, Easy Drive, one just north of Charlotte, and both of those are just about the epitome of what we're looking for, I think. So if you could arrange that, I think you'd find it very informative.
No, we would before we do anything, but we wanted to get some renderings done and get started on just preliminary looks, I guess you would call them, what we could do with the way the property's laid out and the buildings that are there, and that would satisfy what you were looking for too.
But, you know, you got so much traffic going by that you'll have a great exposure, and
right.
That'll bring people in.
At least twice a day.
Yeah.
8:30 and 3:30. They'll
Yep.
be there. All right, thanks.
Some other, as far as uses, does anybody have anything else? Residential's a new use that's proposed there, which I think is critical to have. There's also some language that's built into this that for any use that's not specifically listed, but, you know, would be consistent with a mixed-use town center, that could be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. So that gives us some flexibility in the event that we didn't think of a use that would be really nice for a mixed-use town center, but it's not specifically listed as being permitted. Is everybody okay with the rest of the uses there? So I'm just going to try to be a little quick here. We've had a good discussion, though. That's a good thing. The building facade, again, the appearance and the function, I think, are the two most important things for the mixed-use town center. So how the building looks is going to be critical. We're proposing basically for a new development, at least at this point, as I mentioned earlier, the architectural design standards are in the works. They're not going to be ready until after the first of the year. As far as maybe a formal action on them, there'll be drafts to look at prior to that. And that will help us with some language, probably more specific language to deal with the appearance of buildings. In the meantime, we're kind of following some language in the town center district for new developments, because that was very well thought out and very detailed. And then we've got some language that we used with our R6 discussion on like substantial redevelopments, you know, so that you have a significant masonry component. You know, you use high quality materials. You limit to very low levels the use of stucco and things like that wouldn't be consistent with that downtown look. So, how did y'all? Are you okay with what we've got so far on the building facade requirements?
I have a question about the only very limited use of synthetic.
Stucco.
Is that only very limited? Do we need to be more specific with that, or is that? I was wondering.
Well,
if that
this
was
is
a little
all
bit
probably
limited.
going to change when the standards are.
And standards.
Whatever happens with those. Yeah, that's a little bit open-ended, but I think you could have some stucco maybe just as a minor accent. Maybe we should just not even allow it. I don't know. Noah, you might know more about that. But the bottom line is I think we're trying to promote masonry-type structures that have lasting value and kind of a timeless character to them.
I don't want us to put something in now and something happen between now and the time that the architectural review comes out that we can't change that.
I think the words "very limited" is something that I think the staff can in the event something was put in. I mean, I think that the staff can understand that and give some guidance to an applicant on that. And when I think of that, it's purely some small architectural elements that are not primary to the building.
Yeah, some accenting. Yeah. Anything else on that one?
Can I ask just a clarity question? The last sentence says, such building facades shall not use, and so forth. The first sentence says about which exceed 50% of the current value. If it doesn't exceed 50% of the current value, can they use fabricated metal panels and vinyl siding to
as it's currently worded, if it doesn't fall under that redevelopment, threshold, then they would be subject to really what we have now, which is really nothing as far as specific parameters. Because again, the focus was new development and substantial redevelopment. To try to work with the existing property owners. If somebody, and we put in pretty clear language on what we would constitute as being a redevelopment. So that's the way it's currently worded. Now, I don't know if y'all are okay with that or not, but
I think that's going to be pretty clear to an architect, to a developer, to an engineer on this. I mean, for instance, you're taking a one-story building to a two-story building, that's a redevelopment.
Yes.
But if you're just refacing or refacading a building, it's more cosmetic, and I don't think our intent, at least my intent, is not to necessarily force that particular applicant to meet our architectural guidelines. But if they're moving the building footprint, to me, that's a redevelopment. So I think that redevelopment term is pretty widely used, and we should be safe in being able to hang our hat on that.
And that will be dealt with more specifically with these standards that the consultants are working on. We ask them to really focus on these older centers and how they could be redeveloped, and it would be consistent with the general intent of the architectural standards. So, but for now, I mean, that's just language that largely was taken from that R6 amendment process. The next one was low impact development. Again, it's the appearance of the site and then trying to provide for some flexibility for property owners to do things more creative that are kind of really frequently used anymore. We've got several developments in the town, including the new 4-story bank down there, Southeast Bank, that has an entire parking lot of permeable pavers. And it looks really nice. It's a great looking product. That's another way of addressing the parking lot appearance. Was one way of softening that. So we're trying to encourage those kind of more creative, cutting edge approaches in this kind of setting, encouraging outdoor gathering places and things that provide for lively streetscapes. So, low impact development kind of fits in well with that. As far as how this area, the purple area, relates to surrounding plans of development, like, for example, Glen Abbey and Park Place and things like that, we left the, setbacks and buffer strips the same as they are in regular C1 to protect those adjacent developed communities. The lot coverage and the minimum land area is the same as in C1, so that hasn't changed. One change that's proposed is a change to the height. In C1 currently it's 2.5 stories or 35 feet. This language would go to 3 stories or 45 feet, which is consistent with the language we used in the R6 zoning ordinance amendments recently. Again, we're not saying at this point that we're requiring somebody to build a 3-story building everywhere, but it does give them that flexibility and that option should they choose to do that in an appropriate location. One question that I did pose in the write-up is whether there should be a minimum height. In other words, you have to have at least more than one story. I'm just throwing it out there for discussion. That's currently in the TCD, and I think it's in the BD4 zoning districts. How do y'all feel about that question?
I think the look we were going for more in the town center was consistency with either 3 or 4 story, or 2 or 3 maybe at a time. But for redevelopment, I don't know that is that all that feasible with the redevelopment?
Yeah, it's feasible. Yeah, and certainly with the new development.
With the new development, it would be, but
well, like if Tommy was wanting to put a building over on Weston Avenue, we would want to require that to be 2-story, for example. That's a specific question. Or would it be okay that it be a single-story building?
Well, you know what, it's kind of a delicate balance, but if our intent is to try to get more people living in this downtown area, I really think then, and I know it will be a challenge for some of the properties, but I really think we need to start looking at a multi-story building, because you're not going to get residents to live, obviously, on the ground floor. No. And the fewer opportunities we have for that, we're just never going to achieve that ultimate goal. So, again, I know for some properties it'd be challenging, but I think that was, as I go back in time and I look into the future, I think that's really the direction we're ultimately trying to go. So I'd like to see us go with 2-story.
Everybody else okay with that? Okay. And, you know, we just talk about the benefits of having the increased height in this context. You know, it does provide you with more options. But you also have to address the parking like Betty was talking about. And so you have more square footage that you have to account for. And that brings me to the discussion of parking. The only thing we included in this draft was just language from the TCD district, which was targeted toward a more than single-story building, and it had a gradation in there with the allocations based on, the first floor has a higher percentage as opposed to the second and third floor, and we studied that and looked at that very closely when we were working on the TCD, because like what Rick was telling me earlier, we want to make sure that we think about parking throughout this whole process, because people are not going to come down here and spend the day, or they're not going to want to live down here if you don't have a place for them to park that's convenient, for the most part. So that's what we have right now, is just the percentages that we provided for in the TCD, and that's just minimum. If somebody wants to go above that, that's perfectly fine. We also would certainly encourage and promote shared parking arrangements. You have some churches maybe that are in that kind of nearby mixed-use town center area, and that could be a good opportunity for some shared parking opportunity there, with particularly people that might live in the mixed-use town center. So trying to promote shared parking arrangements and thinking about that on the front end, I think would be important. Should we provide any other kind of parking information at this point, or since we're encouraging a 2-story building minimum, I guess the ratio would be consistent with that as far as what we provided in the draft. And that was 1 to 250 square feet on the first floor, 1 per 500 on the second, and 1 per 750 on the third floor.
You don't see that that's changed in the length of time that this has been?
No, I don't think that's changed. No. Anything else that anybody has. Again, we looked at some of these earlier, kind of what in form could this kind of development generally look like. I think everybody's this is kind of an interesting one. This would be kind of relevant to the town because unfortunately, we have overhead utilities that aren't going anywhere because it would be extremely expensive to put them underground. I wish we could. But this Cassie's is, overhead utility right there. But it's a very nice looking building. I think it's a great corner there that they provided. So, yeah, and the parking's in behind it. Yeah.
Is there any information or anything we need to consider about landscaping and?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that's something that, again, we just kind of put together this as kind of an initial stab at trying to deal with this, but
I would hate to leave landscaping out.
Well, they still would have to landscape it per Chapter 4 requirements. It's a question of whether we would want to build in some additional flexibility or opportunities with landscaping that, would be kind of targeted toward a mixed-use town center. Like screening parking lots, for example. I know in the BD4 we have that language in there. That's why we have those shrubs along Kingston Pike.
I know in the what we were doing before, we talked about having tree line, try to do some tree line.
Yeah, street trees, yes. Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, if somebody came in with a large parcel, I think I would steer them toward just rezoning it TCD and following that language, because that was very well thought out. The issue that we've talked about
it was
in the
very
past,
creative too.
Yes, it's very creative. It's got good design requirements. We looked at lots of other communities, but what it doesn't address are these smaller parcels and these incremental development of a downtown in a redevelopment context or a much smaller kind of application.
I know you addressed the building facade requirements. Now, back when we did the town center district, we also,
yes,
maybe this is the delineation between this being more of the smaller development, the other would be in the larger integrated plan, but we also talked about variations in height and variations.
That's exactly right, yes.
So you didn't just have this wall
yes.
effect.
Yeah. That would, to me, would be a real difference in what we're...
So you would look toward it in the town center district where we have it, but not try to think of incorporating any of that.
Maybe, yeah, maybe we should. Yeah.
If you're going to add on a second floor, then you have the potential there, don't you?
Well, I think what you're talking about is multiple buildings in a row, and that they have some variation to them, whether there's inset or height and facade variations, and all those are definitely, we would want to see that, and that could happen on a property much smaller than 15 acres. Yeah. So that may be something we need to.
Maybe you take a look at that.
Adjust, yeah.
See what might be feasible.
Yeah.
Have we covered it all?
Oh, no.
Hello, I'm Rick Terry. I want to be your jeweler. Well, I'm on the corner. You know where I'm at. And I have a store downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater. So I thought I would just share a couple things. Because what you want, I love the sound. This sounds great. But let me tell you a handful of things that we need to deal with. Parking. Convenient parking. Safe parking. And a parking lot that looks pretty. So I don't know how you're going to handle all that, but you'll figure it out. Important to success of the downtown store is weather. We really struggle downtown when it's bad weather. They just are not going to get out during lunch on Gay Street when the weather's bad. So whatever it is y'all plan, be prepared to take care of what little snow we get. when it comes to that. And because of my location, and I'm more familiar with what I'm dealing with, is that creek right behind me. Holy cow. We've had homeless down there. They come up, they've used my water faucet there on the side of the building to take a bath. Not often, but it's happened a few times. That creek needs to be addressed, and y'all need to be creative with that. In addition to parking and the facade and everything, I think there's a great something that could happen at that creek. Now, what's the state going to let you do? I don't know, because a lot of people have issues with what the state will allow you to do with a creek. But there's a handful of things there that y'all need to address and think about, and I love the ideas of what y'all are doing here, but we need to handicap. And if y'all do these 2-story or 3-story buildings, you're gonna, one of my sons lived downtown for several years, and I just about wouldn't go see him because it was 3 stories and it just had steps, and that was a pain. When he moved, I just got somebody to help him. I wasn't doing that, but there's a handful of things that there, as far as the handicap and the parking, and I don't know what you can do about weather, but there's you want us to be successful in our community, and I've been serving West Knoxville going on 28 years now, 3 generations, and of course I'm a Loudoun County resident. I don't live here, but I've been here a long time. So, but anyhow, good luck.
Was parking your number one problem downtown?
Yeah, what we've seen, and I just was it last year about this time they had that symposium thing where we went to the museum, and they got to show us what the TIFs were doing in downtown. Holy cow, the money that the downtown Knoxville now is raking in from all the TIF money that they allowed on all those big buildings. That's running out. And so they're really collecting money. But they've also started trying with all the residents that live in those buildings down there. They were pretty lax for several years over the parking on Gay Street. The residents are down there parking, and they're staying all day. They got like night jobs, so during the day they're parking down there. Well, I need those parking places out there available to my customers for at least 2 or 3 hours, especially if they're going to go see my neighbor too. And so they were just letting them go on and on and on. Well, after this summer, they've clamped down on it, and boy, they got in the heat. There's been a lot of people complain about the parking and the tickets that they're getting because they're just using that Gay Street parking as their personal residence parking. And so when you think about your parking for these downtowns, you need to think about your residents that work different times, plus the parking that I need for my customers to come in, and they want to be close. They don't want to go park 2-3 blocks away. This isn't Chicago. Chicago, they walk and walk and walk. Holy cow! But they're not going to walk here. They're not going to walk far. So we need parking structures that are going to be close to our places of businesses, and those that are going to have residents, they need to be reasonable because they've still got to haul their groceries. And then they get to the door, they may have to go up 1 or 2 sets of stairs. So those are just some things that y'all need to think about. I'm going to go to see those places that y'all were talking about. Where was that again?
Asheville and Huntersville.
And Swanee, Georgia.
Swanee, Georgia?
It's north of Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's all I had.
Thank you for your input. You bring us a good perspective.
We'll try to massage this a little bit based on the comments. I don't know if it'll probably be workshopped again and be my guess, because we've got we're working on it. Obviously we're trying to move in this direction, and hopefully we're able to provide people that are trying to market these properties with a little bit more guidance as we continue to work through this. So,
public hearing on proposed location of new utilities. Can't get that word out.
We don't have any.
I always have to ask.
Yep, that's good.
The September the 18th, 2014 meeting of Farragut Municipal Planning Commission is adjourned.